Release that which I by Ermu. Chapter 641, The Door to the Fragment. Now he was responsible for raising the newborn. Roland yawned while getting up from the bed. He noticed that the ladder that he had used for falling was still laid on its side and that beyond the blinds, it was bright. He had been wearing clothes when he fell from the ladder, and yet now he had nothing on but a pair of boxers. Was this caused by the inertia of the subconscious? It seemed that every departure from the dream world would continue for some time until he fell asleep again, which would ensure that every time he entered the dream, it would be the exact moment he woke up in the dream world. How formalized was that? He decided to depart the dream world at midnight to see if he could eliminate the sleepwalking-like unconscious behavior. In addition, Roland also felt exhausted from the lack of sleep, totally unlike someone who had just woken up. His eyes were bloodshot and dry, and his mind was fogged. He also could not stop yawning. He had stayed up for more than 20 hours if he counted the time in the dream world too. Roland thought that maybe he had better catch some sleep in the afternoon. Roland put on a short-sleeved shirt and walked into the living room where he saw the diminutive figure again. "You're up so early today?" Zero looked a bit surprised. "I haven't even started to make breakfast yet." "You wait here for a while. I'll go and prepare it now." Obviously, Zero just got up as well. Her white long hair hanging disorderly over her shoulders with wisps of hair sticking up, she looked completely different from the usual her who was neat and quick. She was still wearing the pale blue dress with white stockings, which, if Roland was not mistaken, had been worn for 3 days. Since Zero had kept her bedroom tidy, it must be definitely due to her shortage of clothes to change into rather than laziness or insanitation. Somehow, Roland felt quite bitter in his heart. Not only for her, but also for himself. Roland could not believe it when thinking of the 250 yuan in his pocket. How could he, the founder of the dream world, and Zero, the trigger for the dream world, descend to such a state? It could not be more tragic. Roland would not let the situation worsen, since money was necessary when he wanted to buy books or explore this dream world. He had to find a way to seek a stable income. 250 yuan could not even pay for a taxi, let alone to pay food and utilities. When Roland was absorbed in thought about how to make money, Zero had busied herself in the kitchen. She rapidly lit the fire to heat the pan before pouring in oil and heating it up. With a single hand, she cracked an egg and splattered it into the pan. Although the pan was too heavy for her to shovel up and down, she could just use a spatula to scramble the egg. As the heated oil was sizzling in the pan, the tantalizing aroma of an omelette soon filled the living room. Because of the limited cost of living, their breakfast had barely changed. Roland had 2 fried fritters and a fried egg, just as usual, and Zero had only 1 fried fritter. Were these fritters bought yesterday? Roland took a bite and found it no longer crisp. Of course. Zero grunted. They were the last fritters in grocery store last night, so they were especially cheap. Sometimes the owner would give me some of the raw flour dough from which I can simply make several fritters on my own. Roland was surprised and asked, "Did you do the same thing at your home?" "Almost." The little girl shook her head, saying nothing more. She seemed unwilling to talk about her family. After breakfast, she dressed up simply before carrying the bag and heading off to school. She walked to the door and said, "Uncle, as usual, I'll be out until noon. You have to wash the dishes." "Ah, just go. Take care." Roland nodded. Zero could not help but get startled. After a while, she said yes and went out. Well, it was time to check and count his property. He returned to his bedroom and checked every corner of the bedside cabinets and wardrobe, sorting out all his belongings. Firstly, it was the wallet that also contained an ID card and a credit card as well as the over 200 yuan. It looked so shabby. Roland, of course, threw some expired lottery tickets straight into the trash can. Even if those tickets drew prizes, they were overdue. Moreover, he simply did not believe anything with such a small probability would fall on him. Secondly, there was a cell phone that had a completely empty contact list except for the bank information that showed him the cash flow in his card. Having read the message from the bank, Roland noticed that Zero's parents would send 1,500 yuan to him at the end of each month. But now, for days to the next remittance, there was only 20 yuan left in the card, which would be only enough to save him from starvation. In this case, there was no way for him to do other things. Finally, there were some pieces of jewelry seemingly made of gold, and yet Roland was not sure about it. He wondered if they were prepared for marriage. If he sold them to a gold shop, Roland might earn almost 1,000 yuan, which could be used for emergencies. This was all his disposable wealth. But it barely helped the current situation, Roland sighed. He then turned his eyes towards the furnishings in the lumber room. He opened the door in the far end of the suite and looked at some old items in the room. The iron bicycle and sewing machine, which was covered with dust and cobwebs, would presumably be worth 30 to 40 yuan due to its material, especially the latter one, which was extremely heavy and hard for him to move alone. And the big iron door, which could count as scrap iron, might be worth over 100 yuan. These piddling amounts of money might seem of little importance in Roland's eyes at the usual time, but they were quite precious to him now. If he went to a second-hand bookstore to buy abandoned school books, over 100 yuan would be enough to cover the used books of all subjects. He made up his mind at the thought. Roland remembered that there were small ads posted on the stairwell, which included the phone number of a recycle station. But before selling them, he had to clean them up first. Roland thought that maybe they would be worth more if he made them cleaner. Gasping, he carried and dragged the bicycle and sewing machine to the living room, and then he found something wrong. The thick, big iron door did not seem to lean against the wall of the lumber room, but was built into the wall. Damn it. Which bastard did this? What's the meaning of making a door on this wall? It's the outer wall of the apartment. Is it to make it more convenient for someone to commit suicide? And there's also a lock hanging ridiculously on the door. Wait, it occurred to him that 2 keys were attached to his key ring. Roland immediately went and fetched his keys, which included the key to the main door. He put the other key into the keyhole. Unexpectedly, they were well matched. With a click, the rusty lock flicked open and fell from the bolt. Roland did not bother to pick it up but just pulled the bolt and forcibly opened the iron door. The cold wind tangled with the snow and stormed in. This made him, who wore a short-sleeved shirt and a boxers, tremble. To his astonishment, there was a snow world behind the iron door. He could dimly see a grayish city surrounded by snow mountains that waved up and down far away. Built along the walls on both sides of the crack in the mountain, the city was wrapped in a big breach. In the center of the city, a towering building stood erect in the howling wind, like a pillar connecting to heaven. Although it was the first time for him to see such scene, Roland immediately realized where it was. New Holy City, Hermes. A stronghold city was built on the fractured area of the impassable mountain range. It was also a symbol that signified the mightiness and toughness of the church. Chapter 642, First Exploration. Bang! Roland fiercely shut the door and took a deep breath. The snow that adhered to him quickly melted into water. Although he had long understood that dreams were variable, this scene still shocked him. Roland walked to the window of the lumber room and looked out to check the outer wall. The wall was flat and neat without even a trace of being inlaid or repaired. In other words, the door was inlaid into the wall while the apartment was finished, rather than being built in afterwards. So, was the door only in room 0825, or in every flat? If the door was also built into other flats, what kind of scene did they have and where did they lead to? Roland felt excited about this idea. He returned to his bedroom and rummaged through the wardrobe before slipping on a set of winter clothes. The dilapidated coat he picked looked like it had lost most of its feathers and the wool in the knitted scarf was forked, but since he did not have a better choice at this moment, he had to get accustomed to them. It was a hot summer day. After he put on the warm clothes, Roland felt he was surrounded by stoves, sweating profusely, his body temperature soaring. Once again he walked close to the iron door. He kicked off the flip-flops and replaced them with a pair of green leather shoes before pushing open the door and stepping out. The moment he entered the snow world, the cold wind howled through the gaps of his collar and cuffs and drilled into his body, When the cold wind met the hot sweats on his skin, he felt extremely icy cold and could not help sneezing. Wait, if I keep this door open, does it mean that I'll have an air conditioner that costs no power? Roland thought. He wondered what Zero would think this scene. Roland rubbed his nose and looked back. The door looked like it was connected with a basement that was half buried in the slope. There were many similar low storehouses around this area which were obviously built by farmers or merchants who lived outside the city. But Roland noticed that these storehouses were unguarded, as if the entire campsite was abandoned. However, what really marveled Roland was the scene that was hundreds of meters away from the slope. He saw a clear boundary of this world. As far as he could see, the snow slope was abruptly cut in the middle while spall floated in the mid-air as if they had become weightless. Violent cyclones and endless darkness took place in that space. Occasionally a bolt of scarlet lightning crackled through the sky, illuminating the border area, and even so, the darkness stretched out beyond what he could see. This scene was appalling but extraordinarily magnificent. If he could put words on it, it was like a lonely island floating in the void. The boundary had spread along the mountain land until it disappeared in the snowstorm. Undoubtedly, there must be another similar boundary on the other side of Holy City, but it was too far away for him to see it now. Was this the memory fragment that remained in Zero's mind? Roland did not dare go near the boundary to see through it. Both the violent wind that ripped the spall and the lightning that crackled the sky were dangers to him. He also did not immediately move towards Holy City. Overlooking from here, he estimated that it would take him at least half an hour to reach the city. It would take longer if he had to wade through the ankle-deep snow. He needed sufficient preparation. After that, Roland wandered through this suburban campsite. He could not find anything alive, whether in half-buried storehouses, dwelling houses, or tents. All of the people just seemed as if they had vanished. It was somewhat like the soul battlefield for him, nothing more than a stage built with memory. Accordingly, Holy City should be unmanned as well. Although there was no trace of life around, the storehouses were well filled, like a freeze frame of the memory from when it was spun off. Those fresh grapes in Roland's hand would be an example to illustrate his point. Roland found them in the small basement next door. The iron lock on the door could not stop him. He simply twisted off the lock and the bolt with a wrench he found in the house. There was plenty of food in it, like cured jerky, fillets, wheat, and even a small half-box of grapes. The grapes looked very fresh. They must have been carried from the old Holy City beneath the plateau. When Roland put one into his mouth, he could still taste its cool sweetness. His biggest gain was a small iron box he had found in a hidden compartment in the basement. It was not because of his careful searching but simply because it had opened when he entered the basement. An oil lamp was lit beside it, as if someone abruptly vanished at the moment he was putting things into the compartment. The compartment was left open, revealing the half-hidden iron box. The box contained over 10 gold royals and several translucent gemstones that were clearly of high quality. Roland pocketed all of them without hesitation. After he confirmed the things in the memory fragment could be taken into his flat, he got busy at once. After 2 hours of hard work in the snow ground, Roland moved anything valuable into his house. It included lots of food and several armaments, such as armor, short swords, and crossbows. The former would save on the expense of food while the latter might be worth some money if he sold them online. Roland kept carrying things from the campsite into the lumber room until the room was filled. After that, he had no choice but to lock the door with reluctance. He felt so good after picking up so many things for free. He could not hold back laughing when he thought there was a whole holy city for him to plunder. The wealth of the whole city would probably make him rich overnight. Living expenses were absolutely no problem for him now. Roland was panting as he took off his clothes. When he was about to go and have some water, a turn of sharp dizziness suddenly struck him. What's going on? He stumbled towards the tea table. But before he made it, he felt his field of view turn upside down, followed by a bang, and then darkness took him. When Roland woke up again, he found himself in his bedroom lying on the bed, aching all over as if he had been through a marathon. The night had enshrouded the city outside the blinds, indicating that he had been asleep for more than 1 or 2 hours. Roland thought that it was probably because of his overtiredness, as well as the heat stroke caused by the alternate strike of coldness and heat. And that he probably should have caught some sleep before his labor. But to his surprise, he did not feel much feeble at this moment. Instead, he was full of energy, and so he disregarded the ache. It seemed as if a warm current was running through his body over and over again, causing his sense of touch to be super acute. That was when Roland sensed a faint breath near his pillow. He turned his head slightly and found Zero, who was leaning beside him. She was holding a wet towel, half her cheeks illuminated by moonlight, her eyelashes trembling slightly, her back moving up and down along with her breath. Probably because the room was excessively sweltering, her dress was soaked and her arms covered with fine beads of sweat, sending out a unique aroma. Roland knew that it must be the little girl who dragged him from the living room into the bedroom. Moreover, she tried the basic way to cool him down. He smacked his lips and could still taste the residual of the patchouli liquid in his mouth. How did she manage to pour the liquid in, thought Roland. Roland shook his head with resignation at the sight of Zero, who slept defenselessly. He got up quietly and carried her to the bed. After that, he walked softly back to the living room. Zero, who cared so much about the tidiness of her bedroom, must have been unwilling to go to her own bed before taking a bath. He just simply left her on his bed. Anyway, it was dirty enough. Lying on the couch, he noticed that the ache was fading and that he could increasingly sense the warm current in his body. Roland realized that it was not an illusion, but something hard to describe. He dug into his trouser pocket for a gold royal that he had brought out from the memory fragment and held it in his palm. He willed the warm current to gather in his palm. Roland clenched his fist, and when he unclenched it, the gold royal had been folded into a half-moon shape. Chapter 643, How to Make a Fortune. The next morning, Roland opened his eyes as the first ray of sunlight shone into the living room. The fan had kept blowing hot air all night, and cicadas were shrilling their familiar songs outside the window. Now he had confirmed that the sleep in the dream world would not get him back to reality, and Roland thought that he could rest during sleep. Although this may sound a bit weird. Who cares? It doesn't matter if it works. Yawning, he got off of the couch. When he was about to go to the kitchen to prepare breakfast, he heard Zero screaming in the bedroom. After a moment, she appeared at the door, her face blushed. She pointed to Roland, stammering. Yesterday I slept on the couch last night. Roland shrugged. Please, you're sweaty and unwashed. I would certainly not sleep with you. The little girl pulled her collar to take a sniff, and then she blushed even more like a ripe apple, contrasting with her long white hair. In a flurry, she ran back to her bedroom, fiddled for a while, and rushed into the bathroom with clean clothes. Soon came the sound of showering from the bathroom. By the time she came out, Roland had finished preparing breakfast. Today's breakfast was much heartier than the usual ones. Fried bacon, salt pepper egg, roasted dried fish, and a plate of fresh grapes. Of course, they were all made of what he had taken from Holy City behind the iron door. You bought meat? Zero asked in surprise, her hair wrapped in a wet towel. Roland could see her throat slightly stirring, apparently swallowing. Yeah, I bought a lot and put it all in the fridge. Roland handed her a pair of chopsticks. I found a new job. Did you? She asked suddenly with an excited voice, seemingly forgetting what had just happened. Yeah, I'll get paid soon. Roland laughed. These were bought for celebration. The little girl was relieved. I thought you finally crossed your bottom line and did something irreparable. What does she mean by something irreparable? He thought inwardly. Did she really think I would steal or rob? Robbery doesn't seem a big deal in the dream world. So the reason that you had heatstroke was due to staying out in the sun too long looking for a job yesterday? Probably, he said as he threw a grape into his mouth. In short, there's no need to worry about money anymore. You're so weak. Zero curled her upper lip and said, when will I be able to stop worrying about you? Roland was almost choked by grapes as Zero said that. he retorted. You make me feel like you've been worrying about me all the time. This reduced her to silence. After a while, she glared at Roland. You've really wasted ingredients when cooking breakfast. You added salt to the salty bacon. She seems really good at changing the topic, Roland thought as he picked up a slice of bacon and placed it into his mouth. I think it's quite good except some corners of it were not well fried. You should leave it to me in the future. Zero complained, but she quickly gulped down the food on the dishes. Then she took her bag and was about to leave. You just leave the dishes there. When I come back, and I'll wash them together with dishes for dinner. Wait, Roland stopped her and asked, is there a second-hand bookstore nearby? Do you know where it is? This time he had stayed in the dream world for 3 days before detaching from it. When he woke up in Neverwinter, the sun had risen high in the sky. It seemed the speed of time in the dream world was 8 times faster than here, which meant a night in real world would count as 2 days in the dream world. Moreover, if he delayed his departure until the 3rd day, others would just think he woke up late in the morning. The first thing Roland wanted to do after getting up was to find a gold royal and clench it. It turned out that the gold royal did not change even a little bit, but his fingers ached. Roland sighed at the fact that the inexplicable power seemed to only exist in the dream world as expected. He put the gold royal back to his pocket, slipped on a coat and sat at his desk. Roland intended to copy out the key knowledge he had reviewed in the dream world while his memory was still clear. It included the missing parts from every basic subject, as well as detailed designs for some large industrial equipment. He had made the best of the last 3 days in the dream world. Selling those goods he stole from the campsite behind the door went quite well. He found a local second-hand goods forum where he posted the armor pictures and claimed that he had a number of imitated medieval crafts to sell at low prices. Before long, some buyers who were attracted by its absurdly low price and exquisite craftwork started to contact him. In the end, armor, 500 yuan each suit, crossbows and daggers, 100 yuan each, were all sold out. The prices were incredibly low in the eye of others, but since Roland did not pay the cost of these goods, he was not distressed when selling them. However, he did not expect that gold royals would be much more difficult to sell. Even if he needed them all into round shape, the bank still would not accept the gold that was not traded in a formal way, whether it was gold bars or gold jewelry. Roland could not manage to sell them to a gold shop nearby either, where they only accepted the accessories they had sold and the customers also had to pay an additional fee. A salesman was kind enough to give him an address of an old pawnbroker that accepted unidentified gold at half the market price. When thinking that he had only a dozen gold royals with a texture far from solid gold, Roland simply threw them all into his wardrobe. He might as well move more suits of armor out of the campsite instead of wasting time on selling gold. Meanwhile, Roland had no idea of where to sell 3 glittering gemstones. In the end, he just left them unsold. With money in hand, he immediately swept through the second-hand bookstore near the apartment, buying all the textbooks he had ever read. Those he had not read were completely blank except for the covers. Obviously, the dream world did not exceed his range of awareness, so it seemed impossible for Anna to cover all fields now. However, thanks to his wide range of hobbies, he had browsed a large amount of all kinds of knowledge on the internet. And now he could get any detailed answers to any designs that he had ever run through, even something he had only just glimpsed upon. In addition to those that were essential to quickly boost the technology in City of Neverwinter, Roland also bought 2 new sets of clothes for Zero, as well as a set of winter camping equipment for himself. As a result, he spent all of the money that he had just earned. Roland could still remember how shocked Zero was when she received the new clothes. She tried to turn down the offer several times before accepting them, unlike any other girl of her age that should not worry about so many things. Roland learned the reason for her behavior after he asked about it. Strangely, this was the first time for Zero to receive a gift, which was something she dared not crave, as her parents beat her at home. As the creator of the dream world, Roland felt a strange sense of guilt. Roland had been busy until noon when Nightingale quietly showed up in the room. "Didn't you go down to have breakfast?" "Yeah," Roland said without looking up, please fetch lunch for me. I'll eat it in my bedroom. Is that what you've been doing all morning? Nightingale said as she surprisingly weighed the stack of papers at the desk. How did you come up with so many ideas in such a short amount of time? They've always been in my mind. I just forgot them temporarily. Roland rotated his wrist. Take a look. What do you think? Describe the electromagnetic field in a certain volume, mathematical model using the form of integral? Nightingale put her hand to her forehead and said, Your Majesty, I felt a little dizzy. I'll go and bring your lunch first. Roland could not help but smirk before saying, Go then. By the way, don't you have to go to the office today? She turned to look at him and asked when she reached the door. Why? Bhairav has business with you. He said there were 2 letters for you to read personally. Chapter 644, Diplomacy in the New Era. After lunch, Roland summoned Bhairav into the bedroom. Bhairav, the director of City Hall, who came to Roland's bedroom for the first time, seemed more cautious than usual but looked very excited. Seeing his behavior, Roland could not help thinking of a story that a celebrity in history ran out to receive his subjects with his clothes in disarray, which considerably touched the visitors. It felt like his lazy behavior unexpectedly aroused a strong feeling of trust in his director of City Hall, and he had not intended it to. He had to say that male official had a unique advantage in loyalty. For example, he could talk with him overnight, share one bed with him, and so on. But if it was Edith Kant, those things would be regarded as gossip. Roland smiled and shook his head, setting aside those distracting thoughts. How many letters have you received during the time I fought and slipped into a coma in the northern region? A total of 16. Bhairav quickly reported. Most of them are from lords of various domains asking for trade or visiting, and 2 confidential letters are from the eastern region asking for a peace negotiation. I've answered them all as you've required. They had concluded the arrangements in a council meeting before the war. When the king led the army and marched on war, Bhairav would temporarily deal with the administrative affairs of Neverwinter in the king's absence. He would be responsible for reading all letters that were sent to the king. And the letters which were of particular importance and beyond Bhairav's power to answer would be sent to the battlefront by carrier pigeon. Just for a peace negotiation? Yes. They're unwilling to surrender the right of enfeoffment. Moreover, they advise you to keep the tradition and honor of nobility. Next spring, those people will naturally know what kind of choice they should make. Roland shrugged. Where are the letters for my attention? Where are they from? One came from Astrology Association of the City of Dawn, the other from the Kingdom of Dawn, Bhairav said, handing over 2 sheets of paper. They arrived in the moment you were in a deep slumber, and it tells something that is a bit weird. Weird? Roland first spread out the parchment with the constellation pattern on it. It was written by astrologer of Dispersion Star. He had spent the first half-page on greetings and gratitude. The astronomical telescopes Roland had sent to observatory had been put into use. Certainly, they should thank him for that, Roland thought, but the rest of the letter numbed him for a while. They've tracked the star of extinction in the sky? A star that was sparkling red and was located in a permanent place? The first thing that came to Roland's mind was a synchronous orbit. Judging from his poor knowledge of astronomy, he knew that only objects that traveled on a synchronous orbit could remain relatively still with the planet. If Bloody Moon appeared on this orbit, it would definitely influence the planet. Plus the observation also showed that its size should be extremely small. So Bloody Moon was not a natural celestial body, but a man-made satellite? After thinking for a moment, Roland denied his speculation. If it was a satellite, how could it be descending to Earth? According to Agatha's view, the moment Bloody Moon showed up, the entire continent would witness it. It was greater and brighter than the moon, and its scarlet light dyed the walls of Holy City bloody red. Even on a bright day, one could see its outline. It made no sense. He was silent for a while before putting the letter aside. Write a letter. Invite the astrologers to come to Neverwinter. But they rejected you last time, Bhairav said with hesitation. I'm afraid this time things have changed. Now that the Astrology Association has found the star they want to pursue, they'll just observe the sky where the star is located. Roland tapped the table and said, "You told them in the letter that Neverwinter has developed a better astronomical telescope and found some ancient books about the star of extinction. I believe they'll come." "Yes." He spread out the second piece of paper, or a slip of paper as he would call it. As per usual, a message delivered by a carrier pigeon was always very concise. The King of Dawn died, and his eldest son Apen Moya succeeded the throne. He ordered the elimination of believers of the church, cut off the trade route to the Holy City, and has begun to hunt down witches. As a result, a rebellion broke out on the border that affected our caravan. The original plan may temporarily be suspended. Roland could not help frowning. He knew that it was normal for Berev, who was unclear about what the church had done to the Kingdom of Dawn, to be confused. After Isabella and others retreated, the King of Dawn would sooner or later die of a lack of pills. He just did not expect that Apen would hate the church so much that he even involved witches. Of the policies Apen had given, eliminating believers seemed reasonable. But the unilateral ban on trade basically cut off the source of wealth for border lords. The church must be behind the rebellion. Yet, hunting down witches was something that absolutely went against Roland's interests. An order of such impulsion could not be drawn from the ideas of the three powerful families. The only possible explanation was that the new king had lost his mind when seeking revenge for his father. Roland had thought that the Kingdom of Dawn would be a potential ally, but this fact had disappointed him. "Send a formal diplomatic letter to Apen," Roland said slowly. "First of all, it's to congratulate him for his coronation, and then warn him to stop hunting down witches. A pure witch isn't the same as a common witch, and Grey Castle has established a formal witch organization. Anyone who treats them as enemies will be against the Kingdom of Grey Castle." Your Majesty." Berev wiped the sweat away from his forehead. "Are you sure you want to put those words in the letter? Are there any questions? He won't take it seriously. He may think you're threatening him." Roland was very clear that sometimes even the feudatories under the local lords would not follow the king's order, let alone foreign kingdoms. But the era had changed. If the kingdom did not understand diplomacy, he did not mind teaching them what it really was. "I'm threatening him," he answered nakedly. "If Apen Moya insists on his way, I may as well support a new king of the Kingdom of Dawn next year when we conquer Holy City, a wise king who'll fight with Grey Castle against the battle of divine will. Andrea of House Quinn will be a good choice." Diplomacy in the new era would be built on steel firearms. Anything he failed to earn on the negotiating table would be taken by force. To deal with other kingdoms, intervening in their internal affairs, changing heirs, supporting oppositions, and directly stationing the troops into their lands would be common ways. Roland did not want any other kingdoms to stand in his way before Bloody Moon came. Therefore, the core of this diplomatic letter meant to show, "Don't say that I didn't warn you." I got it," Berev Mons answered with a complex look in his eyes. He was astonished, excited, and undisguisedly awed. He bent down deeply and said, "I'll send your will to the Kingdom of Dawn." Chapter 645, Farewell and Promise. Finally, Roland could not stay in his bedroom all day and he had to go to the office. It was almost dusk when Nightingale informed him that Tilly wanted to meet him. Roland had to put on a coat, comb his long hair, and take a pile of writing papers to the office. He opened the door and found that Tilly and Ashes were there waiting for him. Seeing Roland holding heavy stuff, Ashes immediately took the thick stack of papers. This left Roland feeling quite surprised, as he never expected that Ashes, who had always been dissatisfied with him, would help him one day. The sunset pierced through a French window, dyeing the walls orange-red. At the same time, it also left a ray of gold on them. All of this somewhat gave them a sense of parting. Roland had already guessed Tilly's intention. Though Roland did not want them to leave, he knew that this day finally would come. Besides, it was very sincere of them not to leave when he was in a coma. "I'm here to say goodbye to you," Tilly said calmly. "I have to go back to Sleeping Island to resolve the Bloodfang Association issues." Roland stared at Tilly's dainty face and eyes, which reflected the sunset. After a while of silence, Roland said, I see. When does the charming beauty arrive in the western region? I'll make a farewell dinner for you. Wait a moment, he was suddenly stunned and asked, you mean that you'll come back? Ashes could not help but cover her mouth. Tilly directly chuckled and asked humorously, well, won't you welcome me? Brother. No, I mean. Why do you? Roland opened his mouth in surprise but had nothing to say. After a while, he asked, is it because of the months of demons? Could it not be for something else? Tilly stretched her hands and said, don't you have higher expectations for me? He was completely astonished. Will you? Yes, what you thought is right. Tilly outspokenly said, I'll take the news to Sleeping Island that you won the battle against the church. I'll also tell them they needn't live a troubling life and hide on the small island any longer, because the church has completely lost control of City of Neverwinter of Grey Castle in the western region. When you're ready, I shall bring the witches who would like to come to the western region to settle down here. At that time, I hope you won't complain that they eat too much. Roland's heart was filled with indescribable excitement as he said, they're welcome in the western region at any time. But your castle isn't big enough to accommodate so many witches. If only half of them would like to come, the number is still several times bigger than that of the Witch Union. What's more, most of them aren't combat witches. I'm planning to hire ships to deliver them when the months of demons are over, for the routes are much safer at that time. Princess Tilly revealed a sly grin. He promised without any hesitation. There wouldn't be any problems, for Carl will build enough accommodation before the next spring. Tilly stretched out 3 fingers and said, in addition, I hope that you can promise me 3 extra conditions, brother. Tilly was so serious that Roland subconsciously sat upright. Go ahead. Firstly, you can't constrain them if they want to leave City of Neverwinter for other towns. No problem, he replied instantly, but at the moment, the Kingdom of Grey Castle isn't unified and I can't guarantee that people in other domains will treat witches equally. Thus, for the sake of safety, I advise them to just settle in the western region or upon Sleeping Island temporarily. It won't be late for them to leave the western region by the time I'm able to control the entire kingdom. It's just a hypothesis. Tilly nodded with satisfaction and continued, secondly, you can't force them to work for you if they aren't willing to. Roland poured 2 cups of tea for them and said, can I allure them to work for me? Tilly gave him an affirming look and said, it's okay if you don't use forcible methods. Deal. He could not help smiling. Since they were busy seeking shelters after basically awakening, it was quite easy for Roland to make those naive little girls plunge themselves into the waves of industrialization. He had a massive rewarding mechanism to absorb them. Except for salaries, it would be attractive enough for them to work for him if he set the rule that only working witches had the rights to enjoy scented soaps, delicious wine, and ice cream. Capital sugar-coated bullets were far more compelling than pure violence. Lastly, I hope that sleeping spell can exist independently. When speaking of this point, Tilly appeared to be somewhat hesitant because she thought that this condition was a little harsh. Of course, I'll hand over a part of the money earned by sleeping spell to City of Neverwinter. The sleeping spell? Roland was in a daze. He remembered that this bounty organization was formed to resolve the conflicts between combat witches and assistant witches while making profits for Sleeping Island. In other words, almost all of the witches on the island belonged to the sleeping spell. If the organization became independent, it meant that Tilly got the control of all witches in it. He soon realized why Princess Tilly had been hesitant to say the words. If the sleeping spell settled down here as an independently self-administrative organization, it was the sleeping spell that would still decide to accept bounty missions or dispatch witches to the fjords. So what Tilly had asked for looked like she was taking precautions against him. However, Roland agreed instantly. Of course it can. Though only if they abide by the internal laws of the western region. Isn't the sleeping spell like a private company? Roland thought. Actually speaking, the minute he realized that the witches on Sleeping Island would settle down here, he had mixed feelings of joys and worries, not knowing whether he should conscript them into the Witch Union or not. As one of the three major administrative agencies along with City Hall and the First Army, the Witch Union must be controlled by Wendy, who was loyal to him, so that he could rest assured. But there were too many witches on Sleeping Island. Once all of them joined the Witch Union, Wendy's control would be abetted and it would be less righteous for him to intervene and manage at that time. But if they did not join the Witch Union, he did not want to seem callous towards those witches. As such, with Tilly's condition, Roland now felt relieved. In addition, it was normal for Tilly to feel a little worried, for trust itself needed time to build. Tilly gave more trust to him than before, which was huge progress. Really? Tilly felt somewhat surprised at his quick answer. Don't worry. I always keep my word. Roland smiled. Well, Tilly now felt relaxed, saying, then I shall go back to my bedroom to pack my stuff. The charming beauty will arrive in 3 days. Except for the combat witches who followed me, I'll take Iffy and Soft Feathers with me. Once the Bloodfang Association issues are resolved, I'll send them back. You won't come back until the months of demons are over? You've asked me whether it was because of the months of demons, and I've also said that I don't deny that. She blinked her eyes. That means you'll come back in advance? Roland asked her closely. Tilly nodded and said, just like last year, brother. I'll fight with you against demonic beasts until the heavy snow stops. Chapter 646, Hot Pot. When the two were about to leave, Ashes, who walked behind Princess Tilly, suddenly stopped and turned around to say, Your Majesty, I owe you an apology. This was the first time that Ashes had used polite words when talking to Roland. Well, as for those episodes happening in the palace, Roland explained to Ashes. Ashes shook her head and said, we all know that he isn't you. He can neither lead us to defeat the church nor offer enough freedom and trust to us witches. I didn't believe this until you defeated the church, and I'm very sorry for that. She paused and continued, each witch will remember what you've done, and you're more qualified to be Lady Tilly's brother than him. If Ashes said such words, these would also be Tilly's thoughts. They did not believe that he was Prince Roland. Roland did not know whether to laugh or cry. Was this some kind of recognition? Staring at his smiling sister behind Ashes, he abruptly realized something. The extraordinary covered her chest with the right hand and slightly bent. Her black ponytail hung down upon her shoulders and her golden eyes were like the shining stars in the evening. Envoy Ashes salutes you, Your Majesty. 3 days later, the farewell dinner which Andrea had long waited for finally arrived. What she had awaited was not the farewell but the new delicious food His Majesty promised. Since the last farewell, she had always remembered that there had been more delicious food than just ice cream. So Andrea had expected to taste it this time. But the battle against the church was of great significance, and so she was reluctant to suggest it. But now, she could have a taste. The dinner was not held in the castle but in the expanded castle backyard. Through a long corridor formed by olives and entering the center of the backyard, Andrea smelled a thick scent before seeing any food. Was it crystal fish from the Everwinter's glacier? Or was it flavored egg from the Wolfhart's cliff? Or was it the rainbow trout from the fjords that's known for its delicious taste? No, no, no. I haven't smelled anything that bears a scent so tempting before. No matter how rare the material is, it can't make such delicious food. I'm suddenly hungry. Shavy shouted. Have you always led such a life in the western region? Molly licked her lips and said, what an enviable life. Breeze embraced Lotus and Evelyn together and then explained to Molly. I haven't had many chances to enjoy it. It's them you should envy. Candle explained. This kind of dinner isn't held every day and the dessert is only served every 3 days. Only served every 3 days, Molly held her forehead and said, why do I feel like you're showing off? No, I'm not. Ashes took a glimpse of Andrea, though she could not control her saliva either. She said, hey, don't drool out. If it was at an ordinary time, Andrea would have sneered back, but now her attention was completely drawn to round stumps at the side of the backyard. They appeared to grow out of the ground at the first sight. The tree trunk was so thick and sturdy that as many as 7 or 8 people could encircle it. The hot air coming out its inside made it look like something was burning. When she walked closer, she found that the tree trunk had been hollowed out. A huge iron pot was erected on top of the stumps and the thick scent was coming out from it with soup. In addition, there were various different foods on the short table beside the trunk. They were various but common at the dining table. What made her more confused was that the food was raw. This was the first time that Andrea had seen such a kind of dinner. There were no attendants, no white cloth, no music and no crowds of people. Each one sat around the stumps in a circle. It looked like that they had to do it by themselves. What Andrea thought was true. After all of the witches arrived, Roland clapped his hands to indicate that the dinner had begun. He explained to all of the witches, "This is a hot pot dinner. It's very easy to eat, simply put all the food you like into the pot and enjoy it when it's cooked." Fall was the best season to enjoy hot pots. As a very popular cooking method, it was quite easy to make a hot pot. Even the simplest vegetables could take delicious. The most important thing was that hot pots were very down to earth. Eaters would gather together to enjoy fine food from the same pot. Therefore, they were much easier to promote relationships among people than traditional banquets. As a farewell dinner, hot pots could reduce people's sadness and depression. A hot pot's essence lay in its soup stock. In this age, cooking methods were largely monotonous. Usually, one ingredient had only one taste and people had to pay more attention to the quality of materials themselves. Roland had ordered chefs to mix various ingredients that had distinguished flavors and put them in a pot before to cook them. They included whole chickens, porcine bones, bird beak mushrooms, seafood, spice and so on. So the soup stock was very rich in taste, a taste that could not be made by only cooking one or two raw materials. It was Leaf who made the hot pot table that had a style of nature. She had cast the power of Heart of Forest to make the plants grow quickly. At her will, they had become what Roland had asked for without any extra transformations. They were covered inside with a thermal insulation coating. Even if the spirit lamps were lit, they would not set the tables on fire. Instead, the temperature of the inner walls would spread gradually over to the entire stumps. If they put their hands on a tabletop, they would feel a lukewarm heat. As Andrea put some cooked meat into her mouth, she could not help but hum because of the strong and rich flavor. As tens of delicious food materials assailed her tongue and the hot soup flowed down her throat into her stomach, Andrea could not stop eating, though this feeling was totally different from ice cream bread. According to the table manner of the nobles, they should not take new food until they had finished the food upon their plates. However, they could not keep that manner with the hot pots created by His Majesty, otherwise, they would have nothing left after finishing their food. The other witches on the table were no longer elegant. In other words, a hot pot had nothing to do with elegance. There were even several plates of delicious food in front of Lady Tilly. Even Ashes had picked up food several times from the plates in front of her. Ashes imitated Andrea's tone and said, "The essence of food lies in its original flavor. Without seasoning, the boiled soup can be closer to the original flavor." Who has said these words? In my memories, someone considered salt and spices a barbaric way of cooking and said that real nobles will never use them to cook, but today, what I've seen is different from what she said. If it was before, Andrea might argue with her. But now, she had realized what was the most important thing. It was more important to enjoy the hot pot than play words with Ashes. She lightly glimpsed at Ashes. Without hesitation, she pushed Ash's spoon away and scooped a piece of floating meat into her bowl. This time Andrea ate contentedly. Chapter 647, A Confession. Roland spent all his time copying the textbooks after Tilly bid her farewell. He first started with the basic courses. As he had just got a chance to revisit the knowledge long forgotten, naturally, he needed to take the advantage of it and add the missing information to the textbooks previously drafted based purely on his memory. Second, he had to improve the designs of the current equipment used in the city of Neverwinter. Roland knew there was still a big difference between an acceptable machine and a good one. A more comprehensive design could further enhance the productivity and efficiency of steam engines and machine tools. Based on the new design, Anna had finally completed the first steam turbine. Roland hurried to the backyard of North Slope soon after he heard the news. He and Anna both sat on the workstation, appreciating the charm of this colossal apparatus. At this moment, Roland felt his relationship with Anna was totally different from the ones he used to have with other girls in the modern world. The machine was nearly 6 meters long and was connected to an external preheating boiler and a steam boiler. In main, it looked like a huge metal roller tightly wrapped around by dense impellers. As its spindle was driven by high-pressure steam when the machine was heated by coal, the new turbine was much more efficient than old reciprocating steam engines, and it also produced far fewer noises and vibrations. As a power source of a new generation, the first model of the machine turbine would be used to help with Thunder's naval exploration. Unfortunately, in spite of its versatility, Roland did not plan to build a second turbine for the time being. For one thing, the plant did not have the capability to manufacture a similar one within a short period of time yet. For another, Anna would soon need to focus on improving machine tools. "How do you like it?" Anna turned around and nuzzled up to Roland. "I'm good, aren't I?" Unlike most girls, Anna could not be happier whenever she turned a paper design into a physical reality. Every time she completed a major project, she would not conceal her delight and satisfaction. Roland could tell that Anna was contented with the life she had now. "Of course you are, but I'm just a tad better than you." Roland wiped off the dirt on her cheeks with a smile, leaving a hint of gray streaks on her face. Every time he gazed into her clear blue eyes, he swallowed back the words he had prepared to say, the words that he had promised Nightingale to convey to Anna. Although Roland had resolved to make his confession, he did not realize how hard it actually was until he really tried to do so. No justifications could lift the burden off his shoulders. For the past few days, he had occupied himself by preparing books and drafting designs to temporarily forget about the possible consequences of this inevitable talk. However, his indecision was also hurting the people he cared for, especially Nightingale, who had been eager for an answer. Roland knew he could not keep dawdling like this. When the boilers gradually cooled down and the steam turbine eventually came to a halt, Roland took a deep breath and whispered in Anna's ear. "Come to my bedroom tonight. We need to talk." Roland sat in front of his desk after night descended. He could hear his heart throbbing frantically in his chest. Nobody in this era cares about how many women a noble owns as they do in the modern world. "I'm just following my heart. Nobody will think it's something that breaks a social norm." Roland revolved rapidly a multitude of reasons in his mind but turned them down one by one. He felt two voices in his head debating and wrestling with each other. He wanted to add the last missing part to the book, only to find his quill suspending in the air, not a single word written down. His anguish ended when Anna pushed the door open. The heated argument in his head instantly stopped. Roland put down the quill and fixed his eyes on the girl. Anna looked nothing unusual. She was cloaked in an oversized pajama. A strand of damp fringes was clinging to her forehead. A faint, placid smile was lingering in her eyes, and she looked as serene as ever. Roland somehow remembered that after the months of demons of the first year, Anna had voluntarily waited for him at the stairs. She never whined or complained, but simply told him her thoughts and what she wanted explicitly. Now it was his turn. Roland pulled her to the desk and slowly confessed what had bothered him all this time. An ensuing silence fell between them. The silence was so long that Roland thought Anna would turn away abruptly and leave the room. To his surprise, however, he did not perceive a noticeable change in her expression when he slowly looked up at her. "That's it?" Roland failed to come up with an answer promptly. "What?" "I've been wondering when you'll tell me this." Anna seated herself next to him. "I don't want you to spit it out that fast, but at the same time, I wish you could talk to me as soon as you can. Now I finally don't need to worry about this matter anymore." Roland gaped. "You've known it from the beginning." Anna replied bluntly, "I can tell that you have feelings for Nightingale. The more hesitant you seem to be, the more it shows that you care about me. But I also hope you can open up to me earlier because I would like to share your burden no matter what it is." Anna let out a sigh at these words. I never dreamed that I would win a royal family member's affections. I thought I would be very contented to just be with you. After you told me that you would one day marry me, I changed my mind, Roland. I won't share you with anybody. I'm sorry. You don't need to apologize, for love knows no right or wrong. Plus, I feel glad that you picked this moment to confess to me. Anna paused for a second and then said, You aren't a man from this world, are you? Roland's heart stopped with a queer jerk. Nobody, whether he's a noble or a civilian, will ever feel hesitant or restless because of this kind of problem, unless he was brought up in a completely different world. Anna continued, Likewise, people in this world may treat a witch fairly, but they'll never befriend her. Do you remember our bet? In the book, I wrote that you were a guest from another world, a world that wasn't hell or an abyss, but a more pleasant place. You brought knowledge we've never heard of. It was God that sent you to me. At this point, Roland realized there was no need for him to continue to conceal his identity. He replied, You're overall right, except some little details. Anna giggled. I also wrote that you would tell me about Nightingale in the book. It appears I've got at least 2 things right. Roland suddenly found Anna was not only good at learning. She also had terrifying perspicacity. Before Roland could make a reply, Anna had taken his hand. She pronounced her words slowly but decisively. I can't give my consent to your request, at least not now. Roland was dumbfounded. What did she mean by not now? Did Anna imply that she would agree someday later? I know what's bothering you. Don't worry. I'll talk her through. It's time to sleep. Anna pressed her kiss to Roland's forehead and said, Good night, Your Majesty. With a creak, the door was closed. The room became quiet and tranquil again. It took Roland quite a while to fully recover from the shock he had gone through after Anna left. Chapter 648, Otto's Request. The king city of the Kingdom of Dawn was currently undergoing extreme political turbulence. Even Yurko, who did not normally partake in politics, could easily perceive the underlying tension. Since the new king ascended the throne, residences had been constantly broken in and searched by soldiers. Rumors about rebellions of lords at the border remained afloat in taverns. Foreign commodities on the exhibition had largely reduced, and even Yurko's caravan had suspended the slave trades. According to Hill, Appen Moya had not only taken in slaves from the kingdom of Wolfheart but had also liberated them from slavery. It was a good deed, but unfortunately, the act impeded Roland's plan. Yurko did not worry the slightest about the interruption of the business, for he did not see any potential losses from it. The cavern was provided by Denise, and there was no overhead cost of trading in slaves. He did not really care about that little money he had earned from the trading. As long as he was still the ambassador of the Kingdom of the Grey Castle, sooner or later he would find the other profitable business opportunities. On the other hand, there had been some progress in the formation of the alliance. 3 days after the coronation of Appen, Yurko was summoned to the palace and was inquired about the details of the alliance agreement by the new king. After Appen learned that the church had suffered a serious defeat at Coldwind Ridge, he delightedly put his fingerprint on the agreement. Yurko was pleased that after numerous restless nights, the first task His Majesty had assigned to him had, at length, officially come to end. His good mood, however, did not last long. All his self-complacency was blown away that very night by an airy comment of Hill's. It was too late. I'm afraid this alliance has lost its due efficacy, his guard said. Besides, His Majesty may not like the way the new king treats witches. Timothy, who carried the same hostile attitude, was the best example. You may keep the parchment for yourself as a souvenir. It was a well-known fact that Roland Wimbledon liked witches. However, Yurko did not think Roland would be that defiant and stupid as to break the deal with the neighbor because of them. Even if His Majesty dreaded the attitude of the King of Dawn toward witches, he could do nothing about it. After all, the Moyas had been reigning over the Kingdom of Dawn for generations, and Appen, as the ruler of the country, could manage his realm however he liked. Nobody could ever interfere in their domestic affairs. Having said that, Yurko still sided with his old friend. He wondered, as pretty and remarkable as witches were, how they could possibly be demons' minions. Yorko swayed his head, trying to shake off these trifles that had been bothering him. He was merely an ambassador, whose sole duty was to take messages for His Majesty. As to political commotions and changes in the situation, they had nothing to do with him. As he still got some time, Yorko planned to first meet Denise and then decide his leisure activities tonight. He was just about to set out when the eldest son of the Luashi family suddenly pounded the door. Yorko regarded this unexpected visit as evil forebodings. This man had never brought any good news to him. Otto had earlier claimed that the information he carried could determine whether the Kingdom of Grey Castle would preserve or devastate. Later, he had whined about the disastrous change in the new king's character. Every piece of news he had brought had delivered Yorko a headache. If Hill had not insisted on keeping in touch with Otto Luashi, Yorko would have simply chosen to ignore his presence. He sent for Hill at once and ushered Otto into the living room. "You've got news from the palace for His Majesty again?" "No, not for now." Otto poured himself some tea as a matter of course and asked, "You've got plans tonight?" "Yes." Yorko lied. He hoped Otto would back off. Denise would bestow him a romantic evening, whereas Otto would only give him a fitful night. "Put it off then." "I want to ask you a favor." Otto handed him a black envelope. Yorko opened it and found an invitation card with a seal of a pitch-black dragon head on it, one identical to the pattern on a gold royal. After reading the letter, Yorko shook his head. "You want me to go to the exhibition with you? I don't have money to help you bid." In fact, Denise had taken him to this kind of exhibition a few times. The commodities were indeed of extreme rarity, but their prices were also astonishingly high. A bid of 1,000 gold royals was fairly common in an auction. Yorko wondered where these wealthy merchants had collected all their money from. Otto drained the teacup. "You don't need to worry about money. By helping me, you're actually helping your king. Tell me about it." Hill, who seated himself next to Yorko, put in. Otto answered in a low voice, "I've heard that there'll be a witch for sale in this auction." "Hell." Yorko cursed within himself. He knew it was not going to be good news. Everybody knew that the new king was now hunting down witches. If it was at a normal time, he would definitely tag along with pleasure. At present, however, he would rather stay away from witches. Aren't these people worried that they would infuriate King App and Moya? Yorko left the rest of his words unsaid. The three families shall unite together and fully support the king. It appears that you oppose his order. Although City of Glow was the Moya's domain, there are still some places his arm can't reach. Otto shrugged. Is the exhibition hosted by rats? They won't be rats if they're financially capable of hosting this auction, Hill replied nonchalantly. You're correct. Otto gave an approving nod. The exhibition isn't that formal but is still organized by some of the most powerful local merchants. They call them the Black Money. These people often conduct underground businesses, a big part of which is slave trading. Yorko asked, "There's a slave market right in the outer city. Why do they have to go underground?" "You'll know when you get there." "Can the Paytons join us?" Yorko's interest was now aroused, but he did not want to blindly follow Otto's instructions. "Are you talking about the businesswoman you usually hang out with?" "No, she can't," Otto said flatly. "The Black Money has the strictest selection of their guests. She's a relatively reputable merchant, but she isn't well known enough to be eligible for the exhibition." "Do you want to buy the witch?" Hill turned the subject. "Not me, but Mr. Ambassador does." Otto pointed to Yorko. "The Luashi family is too close to the royal family. It'll attract unwelcome attention if I bid on her. However, it's quite understandable that the ambassador of the Grey Castle wishes to take a witch as his bed wench. I'll take care of the payment. I hope you can transport her to His Majesty Roland's domain via the trade route you've opened before. Nobody will raise suspicions if she's hidden among the delegation. But the slave trade has suspended." Hill spread out his hands. "We don't know when the business will restore. You can hide the witch in your fleet among other cargoes. Why do you want to do that? Because of an old friend. Otto hesitated for a moment. She's a witch. I thought she fell off the cliff and died, but I later met her in the western region of the Kingdom of Grey Castle. His Majesty Roland Wimbledon once told me that every witch was precious and that they shouldn't die because of the church's malicious slander and false accusations. I also want her to have some companions. Well, with respect to this matter, I need to. While Yurko was still rummaging for excuses to decline the request, Hillfox grasped Otto's hand. I see. Leave it to Mr. Ambassador. Chapter 649, Black Money. Thank you. I'll call on you again tonight. Yurko's jaw dropped. His eyes flitted across the two people in dismay. It appeared something was wrong here. They had just ignored him, who was the real ambassador of Grey Castle. After Otto took his leave, Yurko could not wait to start his questioning. All his complaining, however, caught in his throat when Hill said, "This is also what His Majesty wants." Yurko put his hand on his forehead. Are you sure? I represent the Kingdom of Grey Castle. If the King of Dawn knows I'm transporting a witch, the relations between the two nations will again deteriorate and all the work we've done will be in vain. What should we do then? Appen Moya won't focus on these trivial matters. Even if he does notice it, witches are far more important than the alliance. Hill affirmed. As a matter of fact, my men have already checked whether there were witches hidden among refugees when they did the screening. And? None. Hill shook his head. There are two possibilities. One is that there are no witches among refugees at all. The other is that they disguise themselves pretty well and have completely blended in. Anyway, if you can bring a witch to His Majesty, he will surely shower you with rewards. You know how much His Majesty treasure them. Aware that it was his old friend's request, Yurko had no choice but to acquiesce sullenly. He tried to soothe his resentment by convincing himself that the exhibition was just another way of exploring this country. Yurko was indeed curious about what kind of slaves would be sold on an exhibition that even Denise was not eligible to attend. Otto arrived at the entrance of the mansion punctually in the evening. Yurko climbed into a splendid coach bearing no emblem. Furnished with thick fur rug, the wagon was also equipped with two chains hanging down from the ceiling. Yurko did not need to ask what they were for. I didn't expect you have such a peculiar taste. Yurko whistled. Otto blushed. Ahem, it isn't my wagon. This kind of carriage comes in handy when you need to lock someone up while at the same time avoiding curious eyes. You don't have to explain. I understand. Yurko stroked the cuffs at the end of the chains and asked, "Can I borrow the wagon for a few days after the business is over?" Naturally. 50 silver royals per day, and the lease includes the service of a coachman. Otto picked a comfortable spot and lay down after telling the coachman their destination. It'll take a while. You may take a rest here. How long? Around an hour. It's in the suburb of City of Glow. Yurko gasped. Then we won't be able to return to the King's City tonight. After the sun sets, the city gate will be closed, won't it? Black Money will provide accommodations and food. In fact, they'll provide everything you can get from the City of Glow. Sounds like a marketplace. Pretty much. The only difference is it's underground. Otto explained, I went but once, so I don't know if there have been any changes in the procedure of the auction. But I think there shouldn't be a problem as long as you follow the guide. After you win the bid, you don't need to wait until the auction ends but just directly take the witch from the backstage. A servant will lead you to your room. Hang on, Yurko stared at Otto in surprise. Aren't you coming with me? There's only one invitation card. What about the payment? Otto smiled. The black letter represents money. It's a pass issued by the Chamber of Commerce. With the letter, you can directly place your bid. Without a limit? Yurko's eye bulged. Of course there is, but it's way higher than what the cost of a witch is supposed to be. As far as my knowledge goes, it cost about 1,000 gold royals to purchase a witch several years ago. As King Appen has ordered to eradicate witches, the current final bidding price should be a little lower. 1,000 gold royals. Yurko smacked his lips. Those upper nobles just like throwing their money away, don't they? Yurko knew even all the brothels in the king's city altogether would not cost that much. Could he be too outdated to understand what real extravagance was? Also, in order to win her trust, you'd better not touch her. Otto coughed. She isn't a real slave after all, otherwise it'll cause unwanted trouble on the way. I certainly comprehend. Yurko breathed out a sigh. She's His Majesty's woman, whom he would not have the guts to lay a single finger upon. In any event, put a mask on her when you get out. I'll meet you tomorrow. The carriage conveyed them to the west after it passed through the city gate. It did not slow down until darkness closed in and swallowed the last drop of the sun rays. Like Otto had said, they arrived at the destination in an hour. The venue of the exhibition looked no different from any other ordinary residences at the first glance. There was an empty yard lined with jagged fences, at the center of which stood a house made of mud and straw. Behind the yard lay bare farmlands where wheat had been harvested. The fields were dappled with piles of wheat straw that looked like lumps of bumps bulging from the ground. The only thing that stood out was numerous torches on the farmlands, a sign that indicated somebody was guarding this place. Normally, nobody would guard the yard of a civilian's residence. After the guard checked the invitation card, Otto and his men all remained in the yard, whereas Yurko entered the mud house with a guide. After going down a wooden staircase and passing through a man-made narrow tunnel, he found himself in a natural limestone cave. The cave was about half the size of the square in the king's city. By the flickering torchlight, Yurko could see numberless small caves on either side, all pitch dark, leading to somewhere only gods knew. The ground at the bottom of the cave had been polished and tiled. It was so lavishly furnished that only the stalactites overhung above his head showed what kind of place it originally was. The hall had been crowded with people waiting for the commencement of the exhibition. Yurko now understood what Otto meant by not that formal. Based on what he saw, the assembling was quite similar to one of the rats' meeting. Sir, this way. The guide ushered him to the seat marked on the black letter and sat next to him. I'll be at your service during the whole exhibition. Please feel free to ask me if you have any questions regarding our products. With these words, the guide placed Yurko's arm on her soft bosom. In the dismal light, Yurko could see a pointy chin and plump lips underneath the mask. Is this also a part of your service? Yurko fumbled her breasts as a matter of course. What's your name? Of course, sir. You can call me number 76. Her breath was heavy with fragrance, but her reply was not breathless in the least. Yurko had to admit his previous assumption had been wrong. Rats could never hire such well-trained servant girls. If every attendant was accompanied by such a guide, the cost just for hiring these girls would be tremendous. Is it always so dark here? Yurko stroked the soft arm while raising his eyebrows. I can't see the products on the stage clearly with this poor lighting. You'll see soon. The girl chuckled. Number 70's words were soon verified by the metal scraping sound from above. In a second, several iron cables were dropped off the ceiling, each of which was attached to a weird stone at the end. The glow emanated from those stones was several times brighter than that the torchlight. All of a sudden, Yurko could see the stage at the front perfectly. The murmuring across the cave instantly died away. The torchlight appeared to be even fainter compared with the soft, bright illumination of the stones. The whole cave had slipped into darkness, except the stage, upon which everybody rested their eyes. A man in a tuxedo walked on the stage and bowed to the audience. Thank you for waiting. Now I announce that the Black Money exhibition officially begins. Chapter 650, A Special Slave. What's that? Yurko stared at the illuminating object in surprise despite its dazzling light. Is it also something you sell in the exhibition? It has several names. For example, Sunstone and Light Crystal, but we prefer to call it Magic Stone because it's said the stone comes from Demon's Lair. Number 76 explained in a low voice. Black Money once sold them in an auction, and the final bidding price was around 2,000 to 3,000 gold royals. They're expensive and rare, so they won't be sold in every exhibition. At least, it's not included in the list of products for sale tonight. She paused for a second and asked, "Sir, is this your first time to come here?" "Well, sort of." Yorko stroked his nose to conceal his uneasiness. If one stone cost that much, then all the magic stones used for illumination on the stage would be worth more than 10,000 gold royals. This was just such a lavish exhibition. The guide seemed to perceive Yorko's uneasiness. She drew close to him and whispered in his ear like a perfect lover. "That's nothing, sir. Every guest who attends the exhibition for the first time is shocked by the magic stones. This is also a means through which black money showcases their power. You're also one of their means, aren't you?" Yorko had probably not presented himself in such a sumptuous exhibition as much as those great nobles had, but he knew how to talk to women. As his discomfort gradually faded away with the soft whisper of the guide, Yorko wrapped his arms around the girl's waist and drew her to his chest. "Not until I get your approval." "You've got my approval already." "Well, after the exhibition." "I'll still be at your service, sir." She gently nodded. Yorko started to slowly like this place. By the time his eyes were back to the stage, he had missed 2 rounds of the auction. The products for sale were apparently not that appealing to the audience, for few people showed interest in them. Just like the exhibitions he had attended with Denise, the first few rounds were nothing but the less savory aspect of the auction. The main course usually came at a later phase. Otto reckoned the sale of the witch should not be too close to the end and estimated that the final bidding price would be no more than 700 to 800 gold royals. These merchants sought more thrills and stimulation than pure beauties. The audience finally stirred a little bit when the first person up for auction was pushed to the stage. It was a young woman, pretty plain overall except for her fair skin. Yorko noticed the girl, unlike slaves sold in the slave market who were usually stark naked, were glamorously dressed in expensive garments only nobles could afford. In other words, she looked exactly like a highborn lady. "What's that about?" Yorko pinched the waist of number 76. "To dress up a slave as a noble so that you can sell her at a higher price?" The guide corrected him with a smile. "Not a slave masquerading as a noble, but a noble slave." "What's the difference?" "Hold on." Yorko's eyes widened. "What did you say?" "She's a true noble." Number 76 gestured Yorko to tone down his voice. "Not a remote relative or a branch, but a noble lineage, the legal heir of a big family. Gentlemen, do you see this lady here?" The host announced in a loud voice. "Afni Tanfek, the daughter of the Earl of Rubble Woods from the Kingdom of Wolfheart. Since her father was unfortunately killed in the battle against the church, she's now legally the new Earl of Rubble Woods. The Tanfeks is a prominent family that can be dated back to 300 years ago. However, compared with their family history, I believe everybody is more impressed with the Jade incident 20 years ago. This is a good chance to retaliate. The starting price is 300 gold royals. Please feel free to place your bid." 310. Someone shouted immediately. 350 gold royals. 400. "You're crazy." As the bid went higher, Yorko commented in disbelief. "To sell a real noble as a slave? It's a capital offense no country will tolerate." There was an unwritten rule among nobles, which was to place noble blood above everything. Anyone who posed a threat to that rule would be considered as a mutual enemy of all aristocracies. That was also why ransom was commonly paid for the exchange of nobles in the event of defeat. As long as their bloodline still existed, the family would eventually rise to power again. The rule had remained unchanged for several hundred years, and it held true especially for royal families. This auction, nonetheless, was an open confrontation with the entire aristocratic class. Number 76 spread out her hands. "It'll be fine if you don't advertise it. Nobody will attribute the end of the noble bloodline to black money, for the church was the real culprit. How will these nobles end up?" The host just said retaliate, right? the guide burst into laughter. The Tanfex tried to lower the price of jades with some evil intentions 20 years ago. Many jade traders suffered a lot back then. So their retaliation will be, certainly cruel. But these nobles lost their chance to stage a comeback from the beginning, just like witches. The next few products were all nobles from the Kingdom of Everwinter and the Kingdom of Wolfheart, men and women. The male nobles had a wider age range and were more popular than the female ones. Compared with the heirs, the women merchants perhaps preferred nobles who experienced in managing the operation of the family more. Yorko now understood why Otto had said the auction had to be underground. He also came to know the reason for their strict selection criteria. Apart from wealth and backgrounds, black money probably also attached great importance to whether a guest had a genuine intention to make a purchase. In other words, they would only accept people who were their potential buyers, people who were in the same boat. The which Yorko intended to bid was the 10th product. It was undeniable that although in tight bondage, the witch was considerably more beautiful than any of the noble ladies previously presented. Her disheveled brunette hair tumbled unbound down her shoulders. Underneath the thin burlap garment, a few whip marks could be detected on her bare hands and feet. Evidently, she had been tortured a great deal since being caught. Despite her emaciated frame, she had enchanted facial features and possessed an ineffable charm. The host exclaimed. A nameless refugee witch from the Kingdom of Wolfheart. She can heal herself with demon's power. Thanks to the report of our kind citizens, we've got a real piece of treasure here. Think about it, a witch who can heal by herself. You can use her in any way you like. If you dread petting her, black money can help you with that as well. Start from 500 gold royals. Please feel free to bid. 510. 560. 600. Yorko did not place his bid immediately, for he knew he had to wait until the end when the bidding started to slow down. Only in this way could he possibly win the big ticket. To his surprise, however, the bidding price soon exceeded 800 gold royals that Otto had formerly estimated. Presently, it went over 1,000. The bidding continued and there was no sign that it would stop anytime soon. Yorko felt his palms started to sweat. Chapter 651, The Auction. Perhaps that was the witch's ability. Yorko realized that the eldest son of Luashi family had only heard that a witch would be auctioned, but he had neglected her ability. A dangerous and eccentric ability would obviously reduce a witch's value, as no one wanted to be killed. Whether witches were affiliated with demons or not, they were not commoners and it was very hazardous to buy them off. But the ability of this witch sounded not formidable. Self-cure was not able to hurt people, instead, it met some curious people's needs, so the price would be unexpectedly high. Sir, don't you want to bid a price? Number 76 firstly took the initiative to ask. Wait a moment. Yorko wiped the sweat from his hands, thinking, Otto said that the black letter was money, but how much is it worth? 1,000 or 2,000 gold royals? If the witch's price turns out to be much higher than his black letter's worth, will the black money admit the deal? What if they ask me to pay the extra money? A series of questions occurred to him and made him feel extremely anxious. He did not have even 100 gold royals, let alone 1,000 ones. At this time, the bidding competition started to slow down. Each rise would be kept about 10 gold royals and intervals became longer and longer. 1,260 gold royals. Is there a higher bidding? Yorko knew that he would lose the witch if he kept silent. He gritted his teeth, thinking, if the black letter was maxed out, I'll show the black money my identity as the ambassador of Grey Castle. They won't dare to hurt a country's messenger. After that, I'll let Otto pay the extra money tomorrow morning. Bid 1,500 gold royals, he said with a deep voice. Yes, number 76 raised her right hand instantly and said, 1,500. Hearing that, all the guests began to stir. The significant rise of nearly 300 showed the buyer's resolution to get the witch. Besides, it also gave implications to other bidders that they need not bid anymore. Since only the wealthiest and most powerful people could get the invitations of the black money, It was much more important for the bidders to keep a good relationship than to bid a replaceable entertainment commodity. Under such circumstances, the other bidders usually would stop bidding. He hoped that he could utilize this bidding technique he had learned from Denise to make other bidders stop competing with him. However, he did not get what he wanted. 1,800. A new bidding voice came out of the crowds instantly. His heart abruptly sank. The same jump bidding trick meant that the bidder was also as determined as him to buy the witch. "Sir?" Number 76 asked. 2,000. Yorko tightly clenched his teeth. After his guide said the price, the other bidder continued to raise his bidding price, saying, 2,300. Damn it. This price was crazy even for a witch with self-curability. In the slave market, a top female slave with good looks and excellent skills was less than 100 gold royals. With that much money, one can get a dozen of them, with worrying about violating the laws of the Kingdom of Dawn. Isn't that better than buying a witch? With these thoughts in mind, he turned to look, and to his surprise, he noticed that the guide who had spoken for the other bidder was a male. A guide is decided by the bidder's gender, right? So the other bidder is a lady? Why does she want to buy a witch, just for watching? Yorko indignantly asked number 76. What you've said about the choice of a guide is true, unless the guest has special needs. Number 76 nodded and then asked, do you want to raise your bidding price again? You raise 200 gold royals each time until she gives up. Yorko decided to buy the witch at all costs. He did not believe that the other bidder was richer than the three families of the Kingdom of Dawn. After all, this was what Otto had asked him to do. If there were any trouble, Otto would take care of it. As they were competing, the other guests whispered to each other, showing great interests in this scene. When the bidding price amounted to 4,000 gold royals, the other bidder finally stopped bidding. But the price was 5 times higher than that expected by Otto. 4,000, the first time. The second time. The host said steadily and slowly, which made Yorko even more anxious. He felt a desperate urge to replace the host to strike the small hammer that was used to decide the price. Luckily, the nightmare-like bidding voice never sounded again. The third time and it's a deal. Yorko took a deep breath and leaned on the bench, feeling his back soaked with sweat. 4,000 gold royals, this witch costs a fortune that I can't make in my whole life. This is how the great nobles spend their money? At this thought, he suddenly felt that his licentious life back in the king's city of Grey Castle was nothing but a joke. His guide smilingly said, Sir, congratulations. Number 10 commodity is yours now. People sitting around him all looked at him with respect, as he had just spent 4,000 gold royals on a short-term consumable commodity. In the Kingdom of Dawn, wealth stood for identity. Regardless of the anxieties and concerns during the auction, Yorko was very pleased to undergo this wonderful experience, because, for the first time, people fixed their eyes on him out of respect instead of contempt. Yorko enjoyed this feeling for a long while and asked, are the following commodities all slaves? Yes, except the last one. It's said to be a very rare thing that costs the black money lots of efforts to get, number 76 replied. You don't know what it is either. Yes, my boss wanted to emphasize its mystic quality by doing so. He only told us that it's an ancient relic embedded with magic stones, she replied. So it can shine? You've told me that there aren't any magic stone to be auctioned, Yorko twitched his lip and said. Number 76 explained. There's not only one kind of magic stones. Some stones can't shine, but they're the best quality jewelry, such as the blue star sold out at the price of 3,400 gold royals 6 months ago. It was a magic stone that can't shine, but in the dark, you can see numerous shining stars inside it. It was much more precious than common gemstones. And it's far more expensive than common ones. What a beautiful magic stone could it be, as it sold out at such a high price? Yorko thought and could not help feeling curious. Now that he had finished what Otto had asked him to do, he planned to leave the rest of the time here to the eye-opening commodities which he could brag about to Denise. However, seeing the last item on the auction, he felt quite disappointed. It was a sword. for colorful gemstones were inlaid in the handle. He wondered whether the host was going to introduce it as a piece of jewelry or a weapon. The host started to brag about it. He claimed that it had been found in an ancient monument located in the impassable mountain range. Based on the wall paintings around the place where it had been found, the sword had belonged to an excellent warrior. She had been able to use it to change astronomical phenomena, and her enemies had been demons from the hell. Yorko laughed at these ridiculous words. It would be more practical to sell those 4 gemstones alone. The host should not advertise the sword other than gemstones. The sword was auctioned with a starting price of 50,000 gold royals, which made all the guests burst into an uproar. As a result, no one wanted to bid and this round of auction ended in a haste. Where's the witch I bought? Yorko shifted his attention from the auction into the witch. He touched the thigh of number 76 and asked, "Has she been put in my room?" "Of course, sir." Number 76 chuckled. "The black money has arranged everything for you, so this way please." Chapter 652, The Witch and Accident. When they were leaving the dark limestone cave, the guide held Yorko's hand and they walked straight into the cave with ease. Yorko could hardly see the ground, but the guide did not even slow down. Moreover, he could feel that number 76 was no weaker than himself. The bumpy calluses on her palm totally did not match her slender body. Other than serving the guests, she was probably also be treated as a guard for the underground exhibition. It would be nice if such a person could be purchased from black money, as cultivating one was not easy. Although Hill Fox looked smart, he definitely would not follow him forever, as he was still the man of his old friend. Not to mention that it would be a little boring for a man to be his guard. It would be more appropriate to replace the man with number 76. Of course, Yorko was simply thinking about it. After all, the black letter did not belong to him and 4,000 gold royals were far more than Otto's budget. Spending an additional amount of money privately would probably cause a fallout with the Luashi family, which was one of the 3 families. After entering the cave, Yorko realized that most of the channels were naturally formed and the light of the torch seemed brighter due to the narrow terrain. Moreover, the dark sky could be faintly seen through many of the shafts at the top of the cave. The crisscrossing paths led into the deeper limestone caves, where some were already transformed into hotels, while others were hung with barrel signs, just like an underground town. It seemed necessary to arrange a guide for each customer, or it would be very time-consuming to even look for a room. "By the way, how do I pay for this auction?" Yorko softly asked while there was no one else around. "You can simply pass the invitation letter to me before you leave the underground. After you confirm the goods are fine," number 76 said with a smile, "I'll complete the rest of the procedures for you. You can also visit our pub, casino, and hot tub. Black money provides any services, both for fun and relaxation." "Is all the money written down in the black letter?" "Yes." "What if someone wants to buy the guide?" "You just need to pay 500 gold royals to black money," number 76 smoothly answered, as if she was accustomed to such questions, and asked, "Sir, do you want to buy me? Getting along is not about how long we've spent together, but how much fun we've got." Yorko avoided the question and said, "What do you think?" "You're right." She chuckled. "Anyway, may I see what you look like?" "No way," number 76 shook her head and said, "Unless you buy the guide isn't allowed to privately take off their mask. It's the rule of black money. But you mentioned that you can provide any services." "Of course," number 76 touched her red lips and flirtatiously said, "It doesn't hinder me from serving you, sir." Yorko felt even more excited. "We're here. This is your room." Number 76 brought him to a wooden door at the end of the cave carved with number 76, the same as her number. "The room is divided into the inner room and outer room. I'll sleep in the outer room tonight. You can call me whenever you need anything." Yorko lifted his eyebrows and asked after he opened the door, "This is the outer room?" The cave was narrower in the front and wider at the back, and the outer room was only big enough to accommodate one person. It was probably similar to sleeping in the stable, as the ground was only covered with a layer of wheat straw. After all, it's difficult to find a suitable room under the ground. The guide indifferently waved and opened the second room door for him. Additionally, the inner room was not spacious either. It could not accommodate anything other than a big bed and 2 soft chairs. MMM. MMM. Yorko saw the witch he bought from the auction once he walked into the house. She was firmly cuffed by the iron hoops on the wall with both her arms and legs opened wide while her mouth was stuffed with a piece of clean white silk. She struggled with fear once she saw that someone walking in. He was immediately scolding black money in his heart while twitching his lips twice. He thought that the house was at least divided into several compartments with a cage especially used to imprison the slaves, but it turned out to be so shabby. How could I enjoy a long night with number 76 in this case? Performing a live porn in front of a witch? Give me a break. It'll be even worse than directly doing anything to her. Yorko frowned even deeper when he thought of Otto's order to earn the witch's trust. Does Black Money have other rooms? I mean those with extra charges, he helplessly asked. Considering some of the customers have higher requirements of the room, we also offer the semi-open houses which are closer to the ground and rooms next to the underground river. The way that businessmen make money was indeed outrageous. How much is the cheapest room? 3 gold royals per night. This price is enough to pay for a half a month's stay at the hotel in the inner city of the King's City. Yorko unspokenly criticized. However, this amount is nothing as compared to 4,000 gold royals. Otto Luashi shouldn't mind. Consider it as a processing fee. You go out and wait for me for a moment, he pondered for a while and said, I have something to talk to the witch about. I'll call you when I'm done. Yes, sir, number 76 said respectfully and left the room. As Yorko took off his coat and walked toward the witch, she struggled even harder and looked terrified. He sighed while covering her body with his cloth and said, Listen, I'm entrusted by someone to come here to save you. As long as you don't make any noise, no one is going to hurt you. Everything will be fine. Please nod twice if you understand. The witch stopped struggling and stared at Yorko for a long while as if she could not believe what she had just heard. The ambassador had to repeat it as softly and slowly as possible. The witch was very beautiful, but the childish little girl was really not his cup of tea. She finally nodded this time. Yorko was relieved and he reached out to remove the silk cloth from the witch's mouth. Who are you? She asked after coughing slightly. Someone who has come to save you. Yorko sat down on the bed and asked, Do you have a name? Amy, she paused and said, Why don't you release me if you're here to save me? What if you run away? I don't have another 4,000 gold royals to buy you again if you get caught. Yorko opened his arms and said, You'd better be chained for safety and it'll prevent raising any suspicion. I'll set you free tomorrow after we leave, okay? Really? Amy suspiciously asked. She's so gullible. No wonder she was discovered and reported, he quietly thought. She's lucky to bump into me this time. Not only that, I'll introduce you to a place where the witches gather. There are a lot of companions waiting for you. You don't have to keep hiding. Yorko stood up and said, So, you just need to patiently wait until tomorrow. Do you understand? Hold on, where are you going? I'm going to enjoy a sweet night, of course. He grinned. When Yorko was just about to call for number 76, there was a sudden noise in the outer room along with the noise of heavy items muffling. It happened very quickly and the outer room returned to silence after a few seconds. Number 76? He probingly asked but no one answered. Chapter 653, An Unexpected Guest. Damn it. Yorko was not sure what had happened outside but it definitely would not be good. Is Black Money not supposed to be a regular auction, organized by the powerful local businessmen except for the goods being illegal? He cursed Otto for 10,000 times in his heart. The auction price was first wrongly estimated and now someone is coming for me. I wouldn't have agreed with him if I knew it would turn out like this. Yorko looked around and tried to find something to defend himself, but there were no weapons in the room except for some tools to torture the slave. At this moment, someone pushed open the door and nipped in. Yorko knelt on the ground without any hesitation and said, Please spare my life. I'll give you anything you want. However, the person did not stop but pounced towards him. After he finished saying, he subconsciously held his head down and leaned to one side, hoping to dodge the attack. "No, Annie!" Amy shouted at the same time. The cold wind that swept by his cheeks suddenly stopped along with Amy's voice. Yorko tilted his head and noticed that it was a wooden stick, which looked like it was broken off from the chair. He would probably immediately pass out if he was really beaten. Then, he was pressed onto the bed from the back after he was grabbed by his shoulder and held up high by a big hand. "Did he hurt you?" The voice sounded a bit hoarse and it was difficult to distinguish between men's and women's. He said, "He's here to help me get out of here." "You've been cheated again, Amy," she said while shaking her head. Then, she twisted Yorko's arms to his back and expertly tied them. "Saving a strange witch with 4,000 gold royals? It's not a small amount of money. It's a lifetime of savings even for your father." Is that so?" She was really the one who was bidding with Yorko as she knew the auction price so clearly. However, how could she recognize Yorko and follow them all the way to the room number 76 when everywhere else was dark other than the bright displaying booth in the limestone cave? Yorko knew that it was about his life and his persuasion this time would be for himself instead of his old friends or damn Otto. "I didn't lie to her. I'm the ambassador of Grey Castle, and saving the witch is the king's order." "Ambassador of Grey Castle?" Yorko knew that this approach worked when the hand that was holding him down from the back slightly shook. "Yes, have you heard of Roland Wimbledon? The fourth son of King Wimbledon III, King of Grey Castle, who's especially kind to the witches. He firmly believes that there are no differences between the witches and ordinary people, and he even fought against the church in order to allow the witches to freely live in his domain." "These are all true, I swear." Annie might not know who was Roland, but the news that the church was defeated by the kingdom of Grey Castle in Coldwind Ridge was indeed well known among the people in the city of Glow. He even knew that the news was spread by Hill Fox and his assistants. The church had always been the greatest enemy of witches. It was likely that whoever defeated the church would win the witches' kindness and respect for whatever reasons. The hand that was holding him down on his back was a lot more relaxed as expected. And then, he had been turned over and pulled up from the bed. Yorko could only see the attacker's appearance now. Annie was probably a woman, but she looked extremely handsome and her body was exceptionally burly even when it was covered by a cope. Both her dashing eyebrows were slightly pointing upwards and her narrow eyes looked energetic. Her hair was tied up into a high ponytail and her forehead was clearly shown. Yorko would believe that she was a man if her voice was deeper. However, her look made him a little jealous. "In this case, why didn't you unlock Amy's lock latch?" "It's the same question again." Yorko had to repeat the previous statement again. "It's for the sake of her safety. It'll be even more dangerous if she doesn't believe me and sneaks out." "Where are you going to take her?" Annie, who was obviously not as easily persuaded as Amy, was doubting Yorko's statement. "Giving her to the king of the kingdom of Grey Castle? Of course, not." He quickly changed his words after saying halfway. "My old friend doesn't treat witches as slaves. There were a lot of witches living in his domain like the normal people and they even formed an organization to specialize in protecting the witches' right." "Enough!" Annie angrily interrupted. Yorko quickly shut his mouth. He heard all these from Hill when they were talking. He heard that His Majesty curbed the disease spread by the church with the witches' help during the outbreak of demonic plague in the king's city. It was obviously a good thing, but Yorko was not sure why Annie did not look so happy about it. "It sounds just like the Bloodfang Association," Annie coldly said. "They used to promote themselves in this way as well." "Blood, what?" Yorko startled, but his heart sensed something wrong. Witches can only believe as themselves, not the noble's promises. She scanned the room and quickly found the key hanging on the wall. "Wait, are you bringing her with you? It's underground here. Don't you see the guards outside the cave when you came in? How are you going to get out?" "You don't have to worry about it. I have my way." Annie unlocked and released Amy. After that, she grabbed Yorko and locked one of his foot on the verval. "You really don't want to think about it?" Yorko got bolder when he realized that Annie was not trying to kill him. He was trying to convince her for the last time while he obediently let Annie lock him up. It's more appropriate for me to bring her out and I'll give her to you when we leave the courtyard. It'll neither easily raise any suspicion nor causing any problem in this case. It does sound great, but it's also possible that I'll be welcomed by swords and God's stone instead. Annie remained unmoved and said, I had made a big mistake because of my credulity before and it won't happen again. After Yorko was firmly locked, Annie dragged number 76 in. She tied both her hands to her back and locked one of her foot as well. Why didn't you kill her? He could see the blood stained on number 76's head, who was apparently badly beaten up and still currently unconscious. However, she was still alive judging from the slight movements of her chest. It'll not be too late for me to kill both of you after I rescue Amy. Annie's words made Yorko shivered. But I'll not kill you now as we perhaps owed the king of the kingdom of Grey Castle a thank for defeating the church. However, it doesn't mean that I'll believe him unconditionally. I'll bring your words to His Majesty. Besides, you can come to the embassy to look for me if you need any assistance. Of course, it's best not to as we can also save a lot of effort, Yorko quietly thought to himself, and it may be for the better as I've tried my best. Even my old friend can't blame me as I can't force them if they're not willing to go to the kingdom of Grey Castle. Annie turned around and stared at him for a long while before she carried Amy and left the room. Chapter 654, The Compensation of Black Money. Hey, are you okay? Yorko pushed number 76 with the other foot, but the latter was completely irresponsive. He sighed, drew close to her, and then picked up the coat on the ground with his mouth to cover both of them. Forget the romantic night. Just suck it up for this single night. After such unexpected turns, he found himself surprisingly calm. The underground auction, the 4,000 gold royals he wasted on a witch, the public attention he drew, and then the attack of the witches. Over one night, he experienced more than he had ever experienced during the past 20-some years of his life. This thrilling and stimulating feeling seems not to be as bad as I imagined. Of course, Yorko would never agree to experience it once again. He had a fitful night. It was already noon the following day by the time they were found by a servant of the Black Money. Then Yorko was quickly transferred to a spacious and comfortable room. Not only was he served soft bread and freshly squeezed juice by the servants, but he was checked by the maids from head to heels as well, even including his manhood between his legs. Also at his request, Otto Luashi, who had been anxiously waiting outside, was taken into the limestone cave. What happened? As soon as Otto saw the ambassador, he asked eagerly, I heard that you got injured. I need a private minute with this gentleman. Yorko dismissed the servants sent by Black Money before describing the whole story in detail. I was almost killed because of you. It was so close. I nearly lost my life. Fortunately, they found I was so kind and tender to the witch that I bought at the auction. If it were someone else, he would certainly be dead and cold now. Complaining had been an ace up his sleeve, which brought him good fortune in the kingdom of Grey Castle for many years. Even if he could not get any practical benefits, at least he could make others feel guilty or sympathetic for him, which he might take advantage of in the future. Otto seemed to be so worried now, so he would certainly do something to compensate him. As expected, Otto appeared very uneasy and said, This happened due to my negligence. I will certainly compensate for it after we go back. What about the 4,000 gold royals? The witch escaped from your room. That's the territory of Black Money, so I guess they won't charge you for the auction. Then didn't you save a lot of money? Yorko teased, you saved the witch, and at the same time made good use of the black letter. The black letters will be remade for each exhibition, so I can't say it's wasted or not, Otto forced a smile and said, but it did save us the gold royals. Yorko suddenly remembered what number 76 had whispered in his ear. You just need to pay 500 gold royals to Black Money. Sir, do you want to buy me? Compared to 4,000, 500 seemed to be a more reasonable number. Perhaps he could let Otto pay again as the compensation for the shock he experienced. Yorko cleared his throat and prepared to speak when the bedroom door was pushed open. A man with a silver mask came, accompanied by 2 attendants. He appeared to be quite old, as his dark brown hair was mixed with white hair. He wore a loose silk robe with a particularly eye-catching black dragon head logo on his chest. "I'm in charge of the exhibition. You can call me Silver Mask," he said with a slight bow. "Black Money apologizes for what happened to you. Fortunately, you were not injured in the accident. We have begun to investigate how the witch fled, and will inform you once we found her whereabouts. We won't deduct the payment from the black letter unless you still want the witch when we capture her." Ahem. I see. Yorko cleared his throat. After all, he, instead of Otto Luashi, was the one who bought the witch, so he had to continue to feign his interest in her. "Don't give her to anyone except me. The 10th round will always be valid." "As you wish. By the way, I wonder how the attacker got in the exhibition. These villains hijacked other visiting guests. At an outskirt house, we have found 2 other victims who were robbed of the black letter," Silver Mask replied. "More than one villain?" "Yes, this was a premeditated act," he nodded. "We didn't expect the witch has other accomplices, or that they dare to launch a raid under King of Dawn's intense search of witches." "Did the villain who hijacked you leave any clues?" "Well, no, she fled after hearing that I was the ambassador of Grey Castle." Yorko shrugged and said, "Haven't the Black Money ever thought of a more reliable way of checking the identity? If anyone can enter just by an invitation letter, I am afraid it is not the first time that this kind of thing happened." "You're definitely right," said Silver Mask with laughter, "but it's also the charm of Black Money. Compared to the risk, people prefer to get their favorite goods without revealing their identity. Of course, when issuing black letter, we will carefully consider our clients, including how much they care about the black letter and their ability to keep it. No matter how the 2 hijacked men got the black letter, they certainly won't have a second chance to get invitations." "All right," said Yorko, shrugging. "So how did she escape from the underground cave?" "I remember there were many guards in the passage from the cave to the yard, and she could not possibly get out while carrying an injured witch. Is it possible that they still hide somewhere in the cave, waiting until you're off guard?" Silver Mask shook his head. "They crept out of the vent. Several iron bars were burned, which should be caused by a witch's ability. So this is the escaping route prepared by Annie. And it seemed that more than one witches participated in this rescue. Otto did everything for nothing." "In that case, there's nothing you can do about it," said Yorko. He then pretended to ask casually, "How's my guide now?" "She'll be severely punished by Black Money. As a guide, it's her responsibility to protect her distinguished guests. She's no longer qualified for this position." "Can I see her?" "Do you mean, you want to punish her personally?" "No," Yorko looked at Otto. "I want to buy her." "But she's already a prisoner of Black Money," Silver Mask said hesitantly. 500 gold royals? I'll pay it with the black letter." "Wait a minute. Mr. Ambassador?" Otto asked in surprise, "What guide?" Yorko pressed Otto's hand but did not answer. Silver Mask nodded after a moment of silence. "I see. If you insist, we'll give number 76 to you as a gift." "A gift?" Yorko was first stunned and then felt very pleased. "Since she can no longer be a guide, it's a better choice to give her to you. Just take it as the compensation of Black Money for this accident." Silver Mask bowed again and said, "I hope we can meet here again." Chapter 655, In the Depth of the Limestone Cave. Holding the Stone of Lighting, Banach Lothar walked step by step toward the depth of the Black Money. It was such a steep ramp that he had to stumble along it even with the help of his servants. "I've finally become old." Sadness suddenly appeared in his heart. Since he was 20, he had taken over the family business and had created a giant chamber of commerce which was rich and powerful. His struggle and excitement during those years were beyond description. Even if he only received an honorary title as a knight, his reputation and status were not lower than that of the 3 noble families in the Kingdom of Dawn. However, it did not mean that his great achievement could be passed down to future generations. In fact, as the scale of the Chamber of Commerce continued to expand, the foundation was already at stake. In those days, in order to consolidate the strength of the Chamber of Commerce, many large businessmen, even the upper noble, were invited to join the chamber. When he was alive, they might be reliable supports or worthwhile tools, but what if he passed away? Would they be willing to stay in their current position? There was hardly any need to answer this question. Banach had 5 sons and 1 daughter, among whom the most outstanding one was his 4th son, Victor Lothar. Even though he was only 21 years old, he had shown extraordinary business talents. But at this age, he could not overpower those crafty partners yet. The Chamber of Commerce was not the private property of the Lothars, therefore, if he forced them to accept Victor to take over his position, he was afraid that he would face strong oppositions. By that time, the Chamber of Commerce would be broken into pieces, and what was worse, his children might lose their lives. What if he abandoned the giant chamber he had created in his whole life? Banach was indeed unwilling to do so. Pondering over this, he suddenly slipped. "Sir, watch your steps." The servants around him immediately held him on his arm. Banach stumbled about a few steps before he managed to stand steadily. Obviously, his body had lost the vigor of youth. He was already 69 years old, and how many times could he try to walk along such a steep ramp? He had to hurry up. Once he thought of the promise given by the oracle, flames of hope were lighted in his heart again. Only after he became one of them could he solve this seemingly insoluble problem forever. Gradually, the ramp downward became flat, and the air became moist. Banach faintly heard the sound of the undercurrent hitting the rock like continuous thunder, dull and solid. Honestly, he did not like such a place, which was secretive enough but gave no sense of security. He always feared that one day the water would crush the cave walls and completely engulf the cave. In fact, quite a few similar cases had already happened in this cave group. Several tunnels had turned into deep pools due to the flow backward of the undercurrent and eventually had to be closed. The black money only occupied a small part of the cave group. If Banach had enough time, he could even make it into an underground city. When he arrived at the bottom of the ramp, the light instantly became bleak. The stone of lighting was still shining, but it was no longer bright enough for him to see the rock walls on both sides, as the size of the cave suddenly increased several times larger. The sound of the undercurrent became extremely loud. It seemed that a branch was passing underfoot. In the deep cave, 2 yellow flames were shining in the distance. They were the guards sent by the oracle to pick him up. "Okay, stop and wait here." "But sir, it's still a long way," the servants said with worries. "That's all right. I have to walk the last part of this road by myself," Banach slowly said. The servants dared not to persuade him anymore due to his years of authority, so they just said, "Yes, sir, please mind your steps." After leaving the cave hole, he carefully walked to the center of the cave. The cave at the bottom of the limestone cave group was very strange, which was shaped like an island. It was surrounded by bottomless gullies and the central bulged rock hill was connected with the ramp by a narrow stone bridge. When he walked through the bridge, he was surrounded by darkness while the magic stone could only illuminate as far as several dozen meters. If he were not directed by the yellow light at the end of the bridge, Banach would even feel as if he was walking in the abyss of hell, and the roaring sound of water at the feet was the whining of the ghosts and evil spirits. Mist gradually rose around, and the scope of the light was further reduced due to the too much water vapor. He knew he had to be particularly careful, as green moss was likely to grow on the bridge. If he had slipped down from the bridge, even the oracle could not save him. In the moist air, Banach Lothar finally reached the central stone island. He was panting when the guards of the oracle turned to walk backward and said, "Come with me. Master Oracle has been waiting for you for a long time." Having no time to complain, he took a deep breath and followed the 2 guards' footsteps. The top of this isolated island-like rock hill was about 100 paces wide, and the place to meet the oracle was located within the rock hill. Before stepping on the rock stairs around the hill, Banach noticed that behind the limestone cave there was an extremely spacious cave which echoed with the ramp he had met earlier to form a straight line. That cave was larger and much closer to the rock hill. In the light of the magic stone, he found that it was a standard round cave and its edge was very smooth as if it was carved by men. If he guessed right, the guards of the oracle entered the kingdom of dawn through these underground passages. When he finally entered the rock hill, he had been too tired to stand straight. Fortunately, the oracle would not mind his posture when meeting him. The guards brought a soft cushion and asked him to sit down in the stone room which covered about 10 square meters. Then they drew the heavy cloth curtain to block the sound of the undercurrent. "Are you ready?" one of them asked. "Yes, please allow me to meet Master Oracle." Banach wiped the sweat from his forehead. Though his body was exhausted, his heart was full of expectation. At these words, the stone of lighting on his hand suddenly flashed, and so were the magic stones in the hands of the 2 guards. Then the 3 magic stones were extinguished in turn, and darkness enveloped the stone room. As it was not the first time that he had seen such a scene, Banach did not feel surprised. Instead, he was full of amazement and awe at the power of the oracle. Soon a purple light curtain rose from the ground, turning the darkness around into a different view. It was also the deep underground, but red lava flowed beneath it. Countless rivers of flames gushed from the rock holes and converged at the bottom to form a cobweb-like picture. Above the flames was the body of the oracle, a giant sarcoma hanging on the rock wall with numerous plant-like roots. The tangled epidermis bulged rhythmically as if it was breathing hot air. It had neither eyes nor mouth, but it could see and talk to him by directly echoing in his mind. This was the real appearance of the oracle. It did not need to transform into a human figure because itself meant extraordinary. Banach Lothar respectfully lowered his head. Chapter 656, The Oracle and the Chosen One. A female voice directly appeared in Banach's mind. "Please feel free to talk to me." What happened above? Instead of speaking, he only needed to whisper in his heart to give the answer. He found that although this way of communicating was hard to get used to in the beginning, it was actually a faster and more effective way. Meanwhile, he also found it harder to lie in this way. Banach told the oracle what had happened through his thoughts. "Holy Oracle, something unexpected happened. They didn't accept the invitation from Ambassador of Grey Castle. This is my mistake. I didn't expect that it would be so hard for them to drop their guard." The oracle did not blame him but said wistfully, "It's hard to predict what people are thinking. Do you have any remedial measure? They've got to accept the ambassador's invitation. It's just a matter of time." He paused for a moment. "Because of His Majesty Apen Moya's new policy." "Tut, common man." Banach was startled and asked, "What can I do for you, Holy Oracle?" "I don't like this witch removal policy. Can you guarantee that nobody will be hurt?" Banach did not know what to say, because he knew that once this policy was implemented, it would be inevitable that some witches were caught or even killed. Given that the oracle had only ordered him to drive the witches to go southwards into the western region of Grey Castle without ensuring the safety of their lives, he thought it would be none of his business to care about how many would survive during the journey. "Is this what you think?" The oracle raised her voice in a sudden. All her tentacles wriggled and the underground hot lava started to surge, showing her anger. "Don't forget what I said. Before the doomsday, every witch is crucial." From the way she reacted, Banach gathered something had gone wrong and then realized that he had been talking with her through the thoughts. In this way, everything he thought would be directly transmitted to her. He quickly explained, "No, Holy Oracle, I remember every word you've said. I don't want to hurt anyone innocent either, but if I do it that way, it'll take a longer time and require rearrangement of my people. After all, not everyone has the courage to defy the king's rules and at the same time keeps this secret." The oracle quickly replied, "I'll send my guards to help you." "How long will it take?" Banach breathed a sigh of relief, as he had witnessed those guards' abilities. Generally speaking, knights were not able to compete with them at all, and some less capable ones could not even see their movements clearly. If 2 or 3 guards fought together, they could easily defeat 20 to 30 knights, which also showed the extraordinary power of the oracle. "I can complete the 3rd step of the plan in 2 weeks. "All right, just do it." "Holy Oracle," Banach hesitated and continued. Are the witches that important? Do the deities only bless them? In terms of wealth or power, I'll make a better. The oracle interrupted, a better choice for the chosen one? You've got no idea. Neither wealth nor power will be useful when the doomsday is approaching. The deities are looking for a savior who knows how to use the divine power instead of a secular spokesman. Common man, you're helpful, indeed, so when the mission is completed, I'll give you an appropriate reward, such as immortality, but you also need to recognize your own position. Banach knew about the doomsday. Every 400 years, a bloody moon would appear in the sky and then the gates of hell would open. Demons would come swarming out of the gates, slaughtering the human beings across the continent, and the person who could resist these cruel enemies was the chosen one. Today, he knew more about the chosen one through the talk with the oracle. She seemed to be searching for someone who can directly connect to the powerful deities, and this someone must be a witch. Not wanting to give up now, he asked again, but, are you sure that the chosen one was definitely among the witches in the kingdom of Grey Castle? The oracle remained speechless for a while, which was an unusual thing. After that, she said, no one knows the answer. This is just another try, and we've tried this for many times in the past hundreds of years. What if we still can't find the one this time? We'll keep searching until the doomsday when the human world is completely destroyed. Thinking that it would be meaningless to become immortal if all the human beings died, Banach smiled bitterly and promised, I see, I'll do my best to complete the task. All the sarcoma's tentacles danced simultaneously, which indicated that the oracle was content. Here's another thing I want to ask. Is the church really defeated? Since the news that the church had suffered a crushing defeat had reached the kingdom of Dawn, the oracle had paid particular attention to this issue. She had even ordered Banach to send his men to the Coldwind Ridge to confirm it. Yes, at the foot of the Coldwind Ridge, the battlefield looked as if it had been trampled by demonic beasts, with deep pits and trenches everywhere. Around it stood thousands of grave mounds. According to the locals, they were built by the king of Grey Castle. He had brought all the dead bodies of his soldiers back to the western region and burnt and buried all the church's dead people at the spot. Merchants who came back from the Hermes Plateau told us that prosperity had already left the holy city and there was only a dead silence in it. Hearing this, the oracle's voice instantly turned soft. This is their end. After a moment, she quickly recovered and said, that's all for today's conversation. I'm tired. Yes, holy oracle, Banach bowed and said. The underground scene went out like ebbing tides, quickly leaving them in darkness. The magic stones flickered several times and then lit up the stone room. Everything that had happened was just like a dream now. A guard came up to Banach and gave him a porcelain bottle, saying, here's the medicine for this time. Drink it. Holy Oracle was very pleased with your recent work. Thanks, your Holy Oracle. With great excitement, Banach took the bottle and swigged down all the liquid inside it. Right after this, he felt a warm torrent flow out of his stomach to rejuvenate his whole body. This medicine could make him feel dexterous and quick in action, but this effect would not last for a very long time. It could not make him live longer, either. Based on what the oracle had said, it could only improve his health and relieve fatigue and restore the body's vigor in a short time. She had said that before he was bestowed immortality, he needed to take this medicine to mend his weak body. Otherwise, the great pain during the process of turning into an immortal would tear him into pieces. Her honesty in telling him the truth about this medicine further strengthened his faith in her, as he believed that if this was a fraud, she would only need to offer him this magic medicine whose rejuvenating effect could attract lots of noble men and wealthy merchants like him. 3 years ago, he had had to move around sitting in a wheelchair pushed by a servant. Now, at least, he could stand and walk on his 2 feet. This was the improvement the medicine had brought him. He was confident that if he could get immortality after completing the mission the oracle had given him, all the knotty problems he had now would be solved smoothly. He lifted the curtain door and walked toward the rock stairs of the hill with his back straight and his head held erect. Feeling totally different from the time he had walked to the stone room, now he felt energetic even in the humid cold winds. His steps were steady, and the roaring underground river sounded like horns encouraging him to move forward. Chapter 657, A Secret Shared by Two Girls. Roland poured himself a cup of tea and looked at Nightingale. "Would you like some?" "Yes, thank you." Lying on the couch, she was reading a newly written play by May with great interest. She was holding the book with one hand and a piece of dried fish with another hand. Since Anna had talked to her, she had disappeared for 2 days. When she returned, she looked relieved, free and easy, as she had been before. Since her return, Roland felt that she kept smiling at him and sometimes peeped at him with eyes full of vitality. Took what she was doing now as an example. She put her feet on the tea table and moved her robe to one side, revealing her long slim legs in black tight stockings. She did not avoid him at all and would only conceal herself when someone else came into the office. This attractive posture made it hard for the prince to focus. He could hardly stop his eyes from involuntarily moving to the side sometimes. As a result, he had not finished even a single blueprint in the first half of the morning. He complained in his heart, "I knew I shouldn't have asked Soraya to paint these stocking-like leg warmers." He took a cup of delicately fragranced tea to her and said, "Here's your tea." She put down the book and took the tea with both hands. She sniffed at it and said, "Ah, nice tea. Could you please add a lump of sugar for me?" He found that she enjoyed both salty and sweet food, and no matter how much she ate, she would never get fat. When he had been in his lethargy, she had lost lots of weight and looked much thinner than before, but after he had woken up, she had quickly gotten back her normal weight. Her weight seemed to have an upper limit. When she reached it, she would stop gaining any more weight. He had nagged her to stop eating too much or she would get fat, but now he realized that was not a problem for her at all. He added a lump of sugar to her teacup and returned to his desk. After painting several strokes on the paper, he still could not stop himself from being curious and said, "Nightingale." What indeed, did Anna tell you?" Well, she nimbly slipped out of the couch and instantly appeared on his desk. "It's a secret. Can't you even tell me?" After a little hesitation, she shook her head and said, "No, I've promised Anna. If it's just about me, I'll tell you whatever you want to know, but this is not. She asked me to keep it up my sleeve for now." "Well, I see." Roland took a sip of his tea and stopped asking. He could go to ask Anna directly, but as a person of normal EQ, he knew he must stop mentioning this thing repeatedly. At least, from Nightingale's reaction he could tell that Anna was not angry. When he picked up his quill again, Nightingale suddenly said, "Thank you." "What?" Roland was stunned and looked up, his gaze met hers. In the warm autumn sunshine, her long blonde hair shone, her skin glowed and her face looked exceptionally beautiful. Time seemed to stop at this moment. "Thank you for telling her what I feel." In the afternoon, good news came from the Ministry of Construction. Neverwinter's first converter steel mill, a steelmaking facility recently designed by Roland, was completed at the North Slope Mountain. Despite that it was called a steel mill, it looked more like a simple iron shed with a large new equipment in it. Different from all the previous furnaces, this equipment was made of pure steel, supported by an angular grate and covered with heat-resistance coating. Its surface was dark gray and dull, making the machine look towering and thick in the sunshine. When Roland arrived at this new furnace area with his city hall officials, this new furnace had been surrounded by a large number of curious experienced workers. "Your Majesty, can this stove make steel? It doesn't even have a fireplace." Lysia of the Ministry of Construction had asked the same question, but he had still built it up in strict accordance with Roland's design. This converter's components were all processed by Anna. With Hummingbird's help, their heavy weight had not caused any trouble during the construction, which was finished in just a week. Roland smiled and said, "In the nature, fire isn't the only thing that produces heat. Let the workers get ready for the equipment's first test run." Roland had compared 3 most frequently used steelmaking facilities: open hearth furnace, converter, and electric furnace. He had firstly ruled out electric furnace because of the lack of necessary conditions and decided on a converter after a long and thoughtful consideration. With the simplest structure among the 3 choices, an open hearth furnace was similar to a traditional smelter in terms of operation, but it also had a significant drawback in energy consumption. It required a huge amount of fuel in steel making, which would definitely pose a threat to Neverwinter's limited supply of energy resources. Given that its coal mines were located far away at the source of the Redwater River and that its coking plant was just put into use and could barely meet the demand of the blast furnace iron smelting, adapting open hearth steelmaking would soon lead to an acute shortage of fuel. Choosing a converter would avoid such a problem, as it hardly cost any fuel. It kept the liquid iron at a high temperature to continue the smelting process, using the heat generated by the oxidation of impurities contained in pig iron, such as manganese, silicon, and carbon. The other shortcomings of an open hearth furnace included occupying a too large area and a long smelting time. To make the best use of fuel, a regenerator should be built for an open hearth furnace to heat the air in advance, and making each batch of liquid steel would take this facility over half a day. By comparison, a converter took up less room, as it needed no additional device and its orbit could double as a transmission line for the liquid steel. It also worked more efficiently. Each of its smelting process only took dozens of minutes, and this smelting time could be further shortened to 15 minutes when the technology was mature. In view of these 2 points, Roland decided to choose converters as the main facilities for Neverwinter's steel production. The workers used a steam engine to put a batch of crude iron ingots into the furnace shaped like a pear. "Anna, make a fire." She nodded and walked up the stairs to the top of the converter. She summoned her black fire to melt the iron ingots into liquid iron in a short time, and the hot red liquid soon lit up her face. He planned to use the liquid iron produced by the blast furnace for the steel mill in mass production. That was the reason why he built it here in the furnace area. He said to the leader of the steelmaking team, "Now, follow my instructions. Insert the blowing pipe into the furnace mouth." This was the first time for them to use a converter, but for these experienced workers who had operated similar equipment, controlling this pipe was as easy as controlling a trailer. In the booming noise of the steam engine, a steel pipe slowly fell into the furnace from the top. The other end of the pipe was connected to a coated flexible tube which led to an air pump driven by a steam engine. When the oxygen-rich air was inhaled into the converter, raging flames sparked to life at the furnace mouth. Orange sparkles splattered from the furnace, looking like fireworks. Glaring white flames made it hard for people around to open their eyes. All the officials marveled at this spectacular sight. Roland got a sense of fulfillment, feeling the hot air blowing on his face. He saw these flames as an emblem of human beings entering a new era. Chapter 658, Dreams and Steel. As the liquid iron rolled over and over in the converter, the silicon and manganese in it were oxidized first, after which it was the turn of the carbon in the pig iron. At a temperature of nearly 1,500 degrees, the carbon reacted with the oxygen in the air, producing carbon monoxide and a lot of heat which made the liquid boil in the furnace. The flames gushing out of the furnace mouth almost enveloped the blowing pipe and the grate. That was why Roland made them coated with heat resistance coating. A large amount of hot carbon monoxide were forced outward. It mixed with the air outside and burnt violently, looking as if the furnace were set afire. The noises caused by gas expansion even drowned the booming sounds of the steam engine. As this scene easily evoked an image of an erupting volcano, all the people moved backward simultaneously in fright, except Roland, who still stood in the place, with both of his hands behind his back. He faced the strong hot winds, totally besotted with the awe-inspiring roars of the surging steel liquid. He thought it was a pity that he could not use pure oxygen in this process at present due to technological limitations. Otherwise, the flames would shine even more brightly. When oxides of phosphorus and sulfur, which were the last elements that were oxidized, reacted with limestone and became furnace slags, the flames began to dim and the liquid iron became molten steel. As the furnace slags were lighter, they were floating on it. The workers could pour the liquid steel out through the steel tapping hole by tilting the furnace as easily as pouring a cup of tea. To prevent the slags from entering into the steel ladle, a modern steel mill would use a slag-stopping ball, a slag-stopping spear or infrared detection, which was beyond Neverwinter's technical capacity. Given that, Roland came up with a simple solution which was not pouring out all the liquid. He instructed the workers to erect the furnace when there were still some liquid steel in it, and then he asked them to dump all the left liquid steel together with the furnace slags. As he was not pursuing productivity efficiency, he did not care about such a little waste. Besides, when he collected enough wasted liquid steel, he could put them back into the furnace to make steel again. To ensure the quality of the steel, the last step was to eliminate excess oxygen in the liquid steel. The alumina poured in Neverwinter from Longsong Stronghold could make excellent deoxidizers. A bucket of pure aluminum extracted by Lucia was added to the liquid steel, and soon aluminum oxide furnace slags and excess liquid aluminum started to float to the surface. At this moment, the whole steelmaking process was accomplished. Seeing the bright molten steel being poured into the mold and turning into steel ingots, all the officials of City Hall were too stunned to utter a word. In this era, people usually relied on blacksmiths to hit on the hot iron repeatedly for a long time to produce steel, and a whole set of steel armors would be treasured as a family heirloom. No one had seen that steel could be made this way. Star of Steel had been able to produce lots of steel, but it was run by magic powers. They all knew that without Anna and Lucia, it could hardly produce anything. However, this time was different, as converter steelmaking required no magic power but common workers. They realized something after witnessing this whole manual operation. They were clear that they could not create another Star of Steel, but they could certainly build more converters and train countless workers. Given that, steel was no longer a rare material. A huge amount of this solid metal would be produced at the foot of the North Slope Mountain to replace those soft and fragile materials, such as wood and bronze. Roland was happy to see the surprise and excitement on the officials' faces. He believed that they would not be excellent leaders if they were not thrilled by this brand new steelmaking process. Common workers might only be amazed by the steel ingots in front of them, but the officials should see the changes and the future brought by this new technology. By now, Neverwinter's coal and iron compound manufacturing industry had been formed. Mining, iron-making, steel-making, and steel-casting processes could all be completed by common people. With a fast-growing population and a rapidly expanding education, Roland now felt that he could hear the steel wheels rolling over the ground, ushering in a new era. As to the quality of this first batch of rolled steel, he decided to let Lucia check it. After that, he could base on her results to adjust the air-blowing time and to improve the slags removing methods. He felt good seeing this achievement. However, he did not want to have a rest after that, as he still had lots of work to do with the memories he retrieved in the dream world. As he had completed all the primary textbooks, he planned to search for some professional books on machinery. He needed high-performance processing equipment as Neverwinter would soon be able to produce a large amount of steel. Those simple machine tools he had made previously could hardly process some high-end products, such as Longsong cannons, heavy machine guns, and grenade fuse. Where could he find those books? He believed that the library of the school was the place he should go. It had been said to be a place full of romantic encounters, but he had had none during all his visits to that place when he had been a student. Despite that, he had really read lots of books there, including many on mechanical design. After dinner, he went to bed early. As traveling in the dream world could not count as a rest, he would be very tired for the first day in that world. Besides, it was impossible for him to take an afternoon nap in his apartment there without an air conditioner in hot weather. Under such circumstances, he had to sleep early and save energy for his activities in the dream world. Waking up in that world, it was still a clear sunny morning in the midsummer. He looked at his mobile phone at the bedside and saw a dozen missed calls. He touched the screen and found that all of them were from second-hand goods dealers. They had also sent him many text messages. "Hey, bro, do you have any more armors? One of my friends wants to buy some to shoot a film. If you do, call me. I can offer you a higher price this time, 700 yuan. How's it? The price for the swords will also be increased by 200 yuan. I'm a true pal, right? But don't sharpen the blades. Otherwise, that's way too scary. If you're unsatisfied with the prices, we can talk about it. Come on, bro. Could you give me an answer?" Roland slid to the last message. It was from his bank, telling him that the remaining balance of his account was 3,600 yuan and 1,500 yuan of it was remitted by Zero's parents as her living expenses. The money could support him for quite a long time. He tapped with his finger to delete all the messages and put on his t-shirt and shorts before going into the living room. At this moment, Zero was still in bed. Not wanting to wait for the little girl to wake up and make breakfast, he directly walked downstairs and found a small rice noodle restaurant in the lane. He sat in it and said, "A big bowl of rice noodle with shredded meat, please." Yes. He thought that as he had money now, he must give himself a treat which was not available even in the king's city of Grey Castle. After all, the kingdom had no rice at all. Soon, a steaming bowl of rice noodles fresh from the pot was served for him. While eating the breakfast, he looked at the apartment building. By now, he had only visited the second-hand bookstore and the small internet cafe 2 blocks away, busy with making money and memorizing books. This was the first time for him to have leisure to sit down and observe the residents of the Apartment of Souls. Chapter 659, Rules of the Dream World. Apparently, the dream world had accepted all the losers in the soul battlefield, as no one in this world found it strange seeing their various hair colors and different facial features. For example, Roland himself had long gray hair, light gray eyes and a straight nose with a high nose bridge, which would attract all the attention when he walked in the streets of the community where he had lived in modern times. However, in this world, all these strange-looking people lived just like the common ones. On their way to catch buses, young men were rushing about with their newspapers and briefcases under their arms, while chewing deep-fried dough sticks. Elderly people gathered in 2s and 3s on the open space in front of the apartment building. Some were moving their limbs and doing their morning exercises. Some laid out Chinese chessboards, ready to play with their friends. The chirping of cicadas, the city noises and the sounds of morning reading, babies crying and hucksters shouting were all wafted to his ears by the morning breeze, creating a characteristic symphony of the tube-shaped apartment building. Roland cherished the scene which was full of life. Right at this moment, a woman running along the lane was getting near to him. Seeing this woman, Roland nearly dropped his chopsticks involuntarily. To his great surprise, she was Garcia Wimbledon. She tied her hair up and wore light sportswear, baring her white thighs and hanging a towel around her neck. Her sweat had soaked her collar and pinpricks of sweat covered her arms. She must have been running for quite a long time. He was more surprised seeing all the people in the lane fixing their eyes on her and some even whistling at her. These people looked so excited as if they were looking at a star. However, Garcia did not give a fig to the crowd. She continued running through the lane as fast as the wind and disappeared into the corridor entrance of the apartment building. "That's Garcia," someone in the rice noodle restaurant exclaimed. "Now you believe what I told you. If you get up early, you'll get the chance to see her. As long as the weather is good, she'll run for an hour here. It's the first time for me to meet a TV star. She looks much better than on TV. Oh yeah, Garcia will have an important match very soon. I'll support her anyway. I hope that she'll win the final. Of course, she will. She's such a genius." Everybody was talking about her, leaving Roland dumbfounded. He wondered why all the residents here were so familiar with Garcia and what the match they were talking about was. He thought, is she a rising sports star or something? To confirm his guess, he took out his wallet after drinking all the remaining soup in his bowl and asked the owner when he came over to clean the table, what was going on. "Is that woman famous?" The owner looked at him in disbelief, saying, "You're not living here, right? Who in this Tongzi street doesn't know Miss Garcia?" Hearing this, he became even more curious and said to the owner, "I've just moved in recently." "What does she do?" "She's a martial fighter." Roland nearly spat in the owner's face. Ahem, what? Come on, go to watch TV by yourself. She's the most famous person in this area, and it's because of her that we can continue to live here. Why? The owner pointed somewhere behind Roland and said, "Look there." He turned around and noticed something he had missed when he had come here. On the wall opposite to this restaurant, there was a big word saying removal. House removal? Yes, some development company has long wanted to pull down the whole Tongzi Street to build a new skyscraper here. That company said that this block was too old and unsightly for a downtown zone. Bullshit, it's clearly a cultural relic building. The owner sighed while searching his bag for Roland's change. Those guys want to relocate us all to the suburbs. If Garcia didn't expose their plot on TV and gain wide support for us, the developer would start to drive us away at this moment. Roland's mouth twisted. That's really an outrage. That's why all of us support Miss Garcia. The owner smiled and tamped the change into his hand. Since you're now a member of the Tongzi Street, you'll become her fan soon. Roland understood that the dream world might use some incredible methods to piece together irrelevant memory fragments, but what had happened just now was too bizarre to believe. What's a martial fighter? Some new Olympic event? And demolition of Apartment of Souls? No kidding. All the doors connected to the memory fragments are here in the building, and so is the creator of this world. And I have to thank my elder sister for making it possible for me to live here? With complicated feelings, he returned to his number 0825 apartment, and Zero happened to get out of her bedroom with sleepy eyes. Her hair was in a mess and her dress was wrinkled. One side of the dress's neckline dropped down, revealing half of her shoulder. She said, "Uncle, you get up? I'll go to make breakfast right now." "No, I've had breakfast and I bring you something to eat." He put the omelette, steamed pork dumplings and milk he bought on the table and then turned on the television. With a puzzled expression on her face, she sat by the table and asked, "Why do you get up so early recently?" "I told you that I got a job, so I can't sleep late in the morning anymore. You parents remitted your living expenses to me, and my company paid me my first month's salary. We don't have to worry about money for now. Use your money wisely. Who knows how long will it last? Besides, we haven't finished the food stored in the refrigerator yet." Having said that, Zero still quickly devoured her breakfast. Roland asked her, "By the way, do you know Garcia?" She twitched her mouth and said, "Of course, Sister Garcia is such a talent. She joined Martialist Association at the age of 20, and I heard that she held an unbeaten record in the preliminaries. All my classmates regard her as an idol, but I think it's boring to watch this kind of fighting matches on the stage." Though he was a little bothered by the fact that he was called uncle while Garcia was called sister, he still put this aside and focused on what he wanted to investigate. Based on what the little girl had said just now, the martial fighters in this world even formed their own organization. He asked, "Are there many martial fighters?" "There are only a few." Zero darted a look of disapproval at him. "Uncle, please stop thinking about it. Not everyone has such a talent. Only those awakening with force of nature will get the chance to become martial fighters, and awakening is just the basic requirement. Without determination and perseverance, even an awakened talent will become a puppet of some great power and bring troubles to the people." How do you know so much about them?" "Our teacher told us. He also said that as compared to imagining ourselves becoming martial fighters, we'd better do more exercises and try to become useful people for the community." She went to the bathroom to get washed and then walked to the door carrying her school bag. "I've got a full day today, bye." When Zero left, Roland opened his hand, feeling the strange power in it. Is this force of nature? His interest in the dream world increased dramatically. The puppet of great power somehow reminded him of a magic power bite. He wondered how this world integrated all the devoured memories and what the rules behind it were. He had planned to go to the library of the school. However, now he had a new idea. Chapter 660, Manifestation of Power. Roland spent the whole day searching every TV channel. He watched several martial arts fighting programs. Different from the traditional fighting matches, this kind of competition was held in an arena as large as half of a football field. With no judge in the arena, the fighting was extremely intense. It was not a rare thing to see the fighters break the floor in the heat of a match, and loud sounds like muffled thunders could be heard when the fighters exchanged blows, which were like special effects added to this match. In terms of competitiveness and charm, it was indeed better than boxing and freestyle fighting. All the martial fighters fought in a literal sense, with no rounds being counted for them and no halftime intervals interrupting the competition. No wonder the audience would get so excited watching this kind of fighting. Roland could not help but knit his eyebrows whenever he saw a martial fighter spit out blood or get massively injured, thinking, these martial fighters really go too far. Aren't they worried that they'll die before they get the chance to spend their competition bonuses? Those matches aside, what he was most interested in was still the martial fighters themselves. They obviously had much greater physical strength than the common people, and the force of nature seemed to give them some special abilities other than just improving their power or speed. Each of such abilities would be given a special title which would be promoted as the martial fighter's nickname. For example, in the show Roland was watching, there was a man named Hurricane. His nickname was Mighty Storm, as he could punch numerous times at a super high speed in a second. Roland was surprised by this propaganda method, which would clearly show the trump card of a fighter to his or her opponent before the match began. He was even more surprised when he saw a demon in this fighting match. It was a typical mad demon which was tall and had big arms. As it wore no mask nor iron gloves, all the audience could see its fangs and three-fingered hands, which were obviously not human features. However, no one seemed to be scared and the commentator referred to him as a foreign martialist. Roland was amazed by this weird and powerful dream world again. To rationalize the existence of the demon devoured by Zero, this world even made it a racial minority. Roland could not help but wonder what would the hybrid demonic beast become in this world, and then quickly thought of Lifts Her Tail, who was full of vigor. When he heard his own stomach growling, he suddenly noticed that the sun was setting. He could not help frowning. Zero usually came back long before this hour. He had read her diary and knew her school was located at Zhongshan Road. It was only 3 kilometers from this apartment building. If she took a bus, she could get home in 10 minutes. Her cram school was over at 5:30 p.m., but now it was 6:15 already. He got a little worried. Anything happened in her school? After a thought, he decided to get out to buy something to eat first. He thought she might be hanging out with her friends right now. As in a summer day, it was not going to get dark until 8 p.m., she probably went to a park or some game room to play with her friends. Given that, even if he came to her school right now, he would probably not meet her there. As her landlord, not her nanny, he did not want to be nosy. She's just a little girl. No matter how hardworking she usually is, sometimes she may also want to relax. So I'll cook. No, I'll buy today's dinner for us. Right at this moment, the image on the TV flickered and the martial fighting broadcasting was changed into the news studio. Good evening, viewers. Now, we interrupt our programs for a newsflash. Holding a stack of papers in hand and with a worried look on face, the host said, a number 29 bus was hijacked at Zhongshan Road. The hijacker had a knife. Now traffic police have sealed the road. We warn all the city residents living in that area to avoid going out for now. We'll broadcast follow-up reports on the most recent progress of the case. After that, it was swiftly switched to the crime scene on the TV. Roland saw a big crowd gathered outside the police cordon, who showed no inclination to leave. Wait, isn't this Zero's regular route? At this thought, his heart sank in a sudden. Is she abducted? That was not good news to him. He was worried what would happen after the death of a key figure of the dream world like Zero. Based on his other dream experiences, when subconscious failed to rationalize a thing, it would stop working. To avoid causing such a trouble to the subconscious, he was even reluctant to delve into Zero's family background. He was afraid that when the subconscious stopped working, he would wake up and forget everything happened in the dream. He did not want to finish this dream before he dug out all the information in his deep memory. More importantly, he would be able to know more about the real world if all the residents of the Apartment of Souls had doors connected to their memory fragments, as he guessed. It was also possible that Zero's death would not change the dream world, but he did not want to take this risk. Now that he had this strange power surging inside his body, he decided to go to the crime scene to help. After he left the Tongzi Street, he ran all the way through the busy roads, feeling a warm flow circulating inside his body. Surprisingly, he did not feel tired and could easily control every part of his body while running at a high speed. He dodged all the pedestrians with agility and arrived at the spot in merely 8 minutes. He felt this 3-mile-long distance running was like a 100-meter sprint. Out of his expectation, when he finally squeezed himself into the crowd, he found that the hijacker was already captured. In a flood of tears, he was telling the reporter that he just did this on the spur of the moment. The crowd responded with boos and catcalls and then quickly left. Traffic police began to clean up roadblocks, getting ready to restore the traffic. With his mouth corner twisted, he complained in his heart, "Who says that policemen always come after the problem is solved?" Besides, he did not see Zero in the hijacked bus. He sighed inwardly, "It looks like I've run all this way for nothing." When he was about to leave, he heard a vague call for help coming out of a narrow lane on the side of the road. He was startled and looked into the lane. At this moment, the sun did not completely fall behind the mountains, but the lofty buildings on both sides of the lane blocked all the light. It was dark inside. He saw nothing in it. Was that an illusion? After several minutes, when he slowly walked past the entrance of the lane, he heard the weak voice again. "There must be someone inside. I should ask the police for help." He turned around, only to find that all the policemen had got into their cars with the hijacker and were driving away. It was too late to stop them now. Should I pretend that I've heard nothing? However, he clearly felt something inside the lane was attracting him. The moment he had got near to the entrance of the lane, the warm flow in the body had started to surge. It felt like an uproar or an excitement, which urged him to get in. He stepped into the narrow lane. After his eyes quickly adjusted to the very weak light inside, he saw nothing but a man who stood with his back toward him. "Are you calling for help?" Roland asked, frowning. The man did not answer or turn around. Instead, he rotated his head 180 degrees to look at Roland. Seeing this movement, he sucked in a breath of cold air. He was even more shocked seeing the man's face. With black skin and lots of blisters, it seemed as if it were burnt. A dark red cyclone shining in the dim light was twirling on his forehead.